You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If the dude's coming in, he doesn't know he's fat.
You have Snapchat winky face.
Target in front of the women's yoga pants section, trying on yoga pants.
I failed out of band.
It's not their fault they were born women.
There's 3 ways you get over on the indies.
Congo threatened to punch me in the mouth.
Don't lose.
Brian Fury just put over a hot dog.
Don't sell.
Bob sucked.
Swear.
150. I was like, get fucked.
He also threatened to kill me and Joe.
He's delusional. But was he? No, he's delusional.
Like, he looked amazing. Worst wrestler ever.
The Fantastic Four.
I just wanted to have orange and blue gear.
Hey, put that cigarette out, Tarzan.
We will be sure to deliver truth, justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling
Way.
Way.
Welcome once again to another episode of Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. My name is Matt Spectro, a.k.a. Tarzan Taylor. And thank you for joining us once again for another episode. As always, I am joined by my fellow host. He's a former Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Champion, and he's a no-good son of a bitch who tried to replace me, Julian Starr.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Honestly, Tarzan, I'm glad you're back because I absolutely hated having to open the show and be the head host here. I'm not much for a lead interview guy. I just like to be color.
All right, well, you know, they say heavy
Black
is the head who wears the crown. All right, this is the premier podcast about wrestling in New England, the greatest area of professional wrestling in the country. Julian and myself, both natives of the area and both big fans of professional wrestling. Why don't you give them a little bit more about what our podcast is all about?
Well, this podcast is about trying to get the truth. People in professional wrestling tend to be a bit too political, a bit too friendly. Well, Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way is looking to break that mold. As Tarzan and I sit down with various guests discussing multiple topics, but trying to gain the point of the truth. We will dig, we will probe, no matter how uncomfortable it may become. We will be sure to deliver truth, justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
All right, and if you haven't been listening, we have a guest every week, but we're going to be doing a special episode where you, the listeners, decide who our special guest is. You can go to our social media and vote for anyone in the New England area you would like to see on our podcast.
The post is on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way's Facebook. You can go ahead, stop by, give us a like, but please vote for the guest of your choice. It could be anyone in the New England area, anyone at all.
We will do our best to get them on the show, so make sure you vote. All right, this is episode 19.
I know.
And before we get on, if you're new to the show, every week I ask Julian a trivia question about professional wrestling in New England. If he gets it right, good for him. If not, we ask our special guests. You're not doing very well with these so far.
I was just about to say, if we ask the fans what they think that I'm going to, or how my results are going to be, I guarantee they're going in the same direction they've always been.
I think you're like 3-6 at this point.
I think it's like 4-6. But
all right. Well, I asked one here that involves you, so I thought it might be easy, but with your memory, I'm not so sure it's going to be.
Fucking garbage, so.
The date, April 28th, 2012. Connecticut Wrestling Entertainment, Brickomania 4, Bethany, Connecticut. It was a 6-man tag team match. Team Star versus Team Mac. Team Star was Julian Starr, Alex Cypher, and Chris Battle versus Team Mac. The Mac was the team captain. Who were his 2 tag team partners in that match?
That makes me so angry. I was so ready to answer my tag team partners. Oh, my God. It makes me so upset. Oh my God, the Mac. Jesus Christ, I don't remember. Oh my God, I don't know. All right, my guess is going to be the Mac, Taka Suzuki.
Hold on, I already told you the Mac was on the tag team.
I know. I'm just completing the team.
All right,
the Mac, Taka Suzuki, and. I forgot his name. He's Hispanic.
I'm just gonna stop you.
Damn it!
You're not even close. We're gonna save this for our guest. On that note, we're going to go on to this week's topic, episode 19's topic. You have a brother, Julian?
I do. I actually have two brothers. I'm the middle of two.
As I do. Well, I'm the youngest. I have two brothers as well. So our topic this week is
I know. He was the guest who filled in.
He was. Our topic is going to be brothers in professional wrestling, especially brothers in New England professional wrestling. I'm going to introduce both my guests. First, he's a former Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Champion, a former VCW Tag Team Champion, and a former APW Tag Team Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the Playboy, Jimmy Milonas.
The Marty Jannetty of the Milonas Brothers.
Welcome to the show, Jimmy. All right. And now we're going to introduce our other guest, his brother. He is a former Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Champion, a former Chaotic Wrestling New England Champion, a former Chaotic Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, a former APW Champion, a former NEWA Champion, a former ECCW Champion. He was a participant in the 2010 Super 8 tournament, as well as a participant in the 2017 Top Prospect Tournament for Ring of Honor. He is not only one half of the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, he is also one half of the Bouncers, Brian Milonas.
I mean, you forgot a couple things. International television star, heartthrob. Clearly, as you can see by the charisma that the Playboys bringing to the table here, why I am... Jimmy, who's the icon? Me. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Now we're going to discuss being brothers in the business. Now, if we had done this about 5 years ago, I'd expect this podcast to be nothing but fat jokes. But let's see if we've progressed since then.
Can I bring up one thing before we get into the topic here?
Sure, I would love to.
Okay, so I don't know how. I mean, I was never your junior booker. I mean, I've put this over many times that I actually literally begged you to come back to book with me. But I actually took over for you. And then, because you had left, and then I literally begged you to please come help me because it was becoming a nightmare very quickly.
Yeah.
And then we did it together.
Despite the jokes I've made, yes, I will acquiesce. We were bookers together. I did leave.
But I mean, I did beg you to come back. Like that's the part that you could have really made the joke on. You had to come save the team.
We had a good run until
we put the title on this fucking guy, and he quits like a week later.
Yeah, I think we really peaked with Cold Fury 14, was it?
It's one of those, yeah. I don't know if the microphone is picking up my son blowing a whistle out there. Asking to be
it's
quiet.
Fine, don't worry about it.
But yeah, I think it was 14. It was Dijak versus Chase, which I heard that we're the reason. Chase had to hold the belt like 14 years or something, however long he held it.
But that's where we kind of peaked. But we're gonna get on brothers. But first,
look at that. Quick.
I mean, it's relevant. I mean, the peak of the brother. I mean, that's you guys won the tag titles.
Won the tag title on the very night.
Yeah, we're here to talk about brothers, not the booking. Anyway,
highlight of your career, Jimmy, winning the tag titles with your brother at Chaotic Wrestling's Cold Fury 14.
Yeah, definitely the biggest moment I had in wrestling.
All right, so we're gonna get to the trivia question first.
Boy, trivia.
The date was April 28th, 2012. Connecticut Wrestling Entertainment, Brickomania 4, Bethany, Connecticut.
Oh, how could I ever forget Brickomania 4?
The showcase of the Immortals. It was Team Star, Julian Starr, Alex Cypher, and Chris Battle versus Team Mac. The Mac was the team captain who were his two tag team partners. Julian's guest was a Hispanic guy, and
I can't remember his name.
I'm trying to think like 2012, who was working down in Connecticut. I mean, this would be the Bethany Town Hall. That's now the NEW arena.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm trying to think of some of those NEW guys that are still hanging out there that are that were CTWE guys. Was Makazi? Is Makazi one of them? I'm really trying to just rack my brain. Like, who the hell was working down there at that time?
They had a very large roster, so I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, except for me, they never booked me. So glad that company went out of business. Geez, I'll say. I'm trying to think now. I'm probably going to be 100% wrong. I'll say Kid Makazi and Jason Blade. Damn it!
I'm sorry, you're not.
Sorry, I'm not up to date on my Brickomania history.
Not even one of two. Jimmy?
Sherman and Scotty Slade.
Could any of the 75 people in attendance answer the question right?
The correct answer.
Hold on, before you go, I just want to say the Hispanic guy I was thinking about was Ricky Reyes.
Okay, all right. The correct answer is actually Mikey Chase and Bobby Ocean.
What?
All right, at least I've heard of Bobby Ocean.
Why don't I remember this match?
Well, as you are so fond of saying, you have the memory of a goldfish.
I do. I had read somewhere that goldfish have the memory of like they memorize something for like 5 seconds and they forget
I
it.
should have
immediately.
freaking guessed Bobby Ocean. Bobby Ocean's probably been on every show in Connecticut for the last decade.
Yeah.
So.
He still works, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does.
I think strictly for Slick Wagner Brown's promotion.
Yeah, I love Bobby Ocean. I just wish somebody would tell him that wrestling's a work.
Dude, he hit me with a forearm once. It's one of the first times ever in wrestling I saw white.
I think Bobby Ocean's actually, I think, a really underrated guy. I mean, if add my 2 cents in that, I think he's a really underrated guy.
I think so too.
I think I'd love to see him get a shot with some of the the better companies in New England and stuff.
All right, so we're going to talk about both of you individually a little bit, but as well as being brothers in the business.
Well, so we'll do 5 minutes of Jimmy and
let's start with a little. We always start with a little bit of a softball. Jimmy, we'll start with you. What moment do you think you decided professional wrestling was something I'm going to take a crack at?
When Handsome Johnny kicked me in the head and knocked me out.
Wait, really? That's what did it?
Yep.
It wasn't like when you were a kid and you saw something on TV?
No, I never wanted to do it. I used to go to this school with Brian, and like I remember like adult and pants, and all those guys asked me. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. I was into playing like baseball and football, and then I did a 1-day camp, and I got on the undercover wear like show at some hotel in Tewksbury, and was in a battle royal, got the shit kicked out of me, and then Handsome told me to hook and go. I leaned in because it's say what, and he heel kicked me.
Oh, so he's concussed 2 Milonas Brothers with that. You know what that son of a bitch told me recently? He's learned how to pull the heel kick. And I was like, you couldn't have figured that shit out like 15 years ago?
All right, Brian, same question. What point in your life did you decide you thought professional wrestling was something you're going to take a crack at?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people can point to like a match or like, hey, I was watching it in this, and I think for me it was just I've just loved it from the time I don't remember not loving pro wrestling. I don't know the point like I wanted to actually become a wrestler. Like I mean, always like in the back of your mind, like I always thought I was going to be a baseball player, to be honest with you, but I when I knew it was a possibility when I had a friend get into it. Because I mean, for the most part, like I don't know about you guys. I mean, maybe Julian's a little older, but for us, Tarzan, like the internet like wasn't like a thing, so you couldn't get on the internet and just find out like, oh shit, there's pro wrestling schools like everywhere. So for me, it was like my buddy got involved with Killer Kowalski's school, and I started going there, and that's when I was like, oh my god, I could go here. So that's when it started to become like it's always like a fantasy or something when you're a kid.
Yeah,
but
it didn't seem as accessible back then.
Yeah,
like pro wrestling does now.
Yeah, I literally would wonder how do you become a pro wrestler? And then I was like 14 or 15 when my buddy started training there, and that's when I realized like, oh my god, this is a real. I could when I'm old enough and have the money, I could come here, and that's how it all kind of came to be.
Now, one of my brothers, Julian, I don't know about you, but my closer brother in my age, my Mark Vincent, we were avid wrestling fans, watched it all the time. Julian, I don't know about you or your brothers.
My older brother, even to this day, is a professional wrestling fan. So me and him gravitated to professional wrestling more. My younger brother was into sports and all the other, actual cool kid stuff. So me and my older brother used to literally play wrestle in the house, out in the backyard, everywhere. And
cool. I don't mean to cut you off here. Cool. How old are you? You probably grew up when it was actually really cool to like wrestling. You didn't go through what me and Tarzan went through. You literally had to hide the fact that you liked pro wrestling. For people calling you all sorts of awful names, the R word that you can't use anymore. Like
I will say, okay, I'll agree. The wrestling was cooler at the time. I guess not cooler to women. We weren't exactly ladies' men, so that's what I'm judging that based on. But no, yeah, my older brother will still text me to this day and be like, and he's a full blown mark, so he'll like, Bray Wyatt should have won the title, and this guy over here, I can't believe the Undertaker's not a part of the company anymore. Maybe he's gone back to the grave. It's like, so it's. But no, I played wrestle. I've said this before. We used to wrestle all the time in the backyard. I really do believe that if my older brother wanted to try wrestling, he'd be really good at it.
So, like Jimmy had said already, so you guys didn't really have like a common love when you were kids for wrestling, like a dream to do it together. Because he said he didn't even. Really
we never had the dream to do it together, but we both loved wrestling. I mean, there was a Jimmy-sized, imprint in our bedroom wall because. I don't even know the maneuver I was trying to perform, but I put him through the wall in our room, and
what a maneuver that was!
Our parents were not very happy with that, but we used to wrestle all the time.
Yeah, no, I used to always perform Shawn Michaels' entrances with him as a little kid.
Jimmy was one of those kids too. Like when he was little, was like I'm 8 years older than Jimmy, even though he looks 12 years older than me. But he was one of those kids. Like my son is like this too. Like where they just don't wear clothes, like just always in his underwear. And that was Jimmy, and he'd be just like doing the Shawn Michaels like pose in the living room, in his underoos.
I still do that at my house today.
Well, Mark and me, we also...
You're full of shit. You can't get down in that position these days.
Oh, no, I meant sitting around in my underwear.
Mark and I actually had envisioned being a tag team together when we were kids, so you guys never really had that.
No, I mean, it's funny because the way kind of just in life for us has always been like just because of the age difference. It's enough of an age gap where we never really got to do anything together. So I don't know if you and Marcus are closer or whatever.
3 years apart.
Okay, yeah, so you're a little bit closer, so that seems a little more feasible. For us, it's like I played baseball, and 8 years later, Jimmy played baseball. I actually was old enough to coach him in little league. I was like 20 and he was like 12, but yeah, still that's old enough. I'm a grown adult and he's still a kid. I mean, he was a kid still coming to watch me. When I already started in the business. So I guess maybe that probably has something to do with it. The just the age gap, and then once he got into it, I think we started to talk about like, oh, maybe sometime. But then I think there was also that like, I mean, I want to say in chaotic, it was just like this, like, well, he's not going to be, we won't, he's not going to be your brother type of thing. Even though, I mean, you take a look at the two of us together, and immediately we're brothers. Yeah.
Did you guys gravitate towards any athletics when you were younger?
I played I played football, baseball, basketball.
Same. Yeah. Like I said, Jimmy, and not meaning to say like he's like like followed in my shadow or whatever, but like it was like I did something. 8 years later, Jimmy would do the same thing. Some of that's probably just same upbringing, like similar thing. Like we have very similar interests.
I was just about to say, I feel like your family, since I've known you, has been a very sports oriented family. You guys are always talking about sports, so I think it's just like you said. You did it. I'm sure your dad was, a big fan of it. So Jimmy's going to do it. So that would make more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it was. We were definitely raised in a fanatical sports household. I mean, we like the Super Bowl was a holiday in our house. You know what I mean? Like that was just sports were a big part of our lives growing up.
And you trained at the Chaotic Wrestling Training Center, correct?
Yeah. So I went to like their first ever meeting. My buddy, he had stopped for a little bit. He wanted to get back into it. He was looking to go back to Kowalski's, but then connected with Mike Hollow, who had just was opening in the process of opening the Chaotic Training Center. So this was like right. I want to say it was like right before like 9/11. There was like a open house meeting at the school type thing, and that I'd gone to, and it was funny. So I was literally at the CTC day one. It took me like 2 months to get the money to sign up, but I was like day one like there.
Jimmy, do you remember how old you were when your brother started his wrestling training?
Probably like 12, 13. Cause I remember going to the school around that time, like 12 years old, walking in, and there's Killer Kowalski and being petrified. And I think he caught on to that because he used to like mess with me. He would hold my hand and shake it, and he wouldn't let go until finally somebody told me to lift up his thumb. But I'm like a 12-year-old kid just sitting there just holding his hand.
At that time when you saw Brian Milonas training and stuff, did you at all go, well, I really want to do this too someday, I really want to join my brother in this?
No, not at all. The only time I got interest in actually doing it is once I kind of got away from sports. They had a one-day camp. So the first ever one-day camp at the CTC, I was a part of that class. And beneficially, like I had the benefits of, like I did ring crew and all that stuff, all the stuff a student does. Prior to that, I was doing all that. I just wasn't doing the in-ring stuff.
Yeah, Jimmy's actually, I mean, at that point, he's very much involved in like playing baseball and like Little League and then Babe Ruth and like playing football. So, I mean, he was pretty active. Jimmy's, I mean, I'll say this now. I'll put the kid over. But Jimmy was a better baseball or football player than I was, and I thought I was pretty good at both, but Jimmy was a better athlete when it came to those type of things.
Were you you're still a kid, so were you in awe at all that your brother's like, no, he's being trained at a school with Killer Kowalski, like he's like actually making this happen?
I remember the first day I went into school because they used to have the little workout setup thing, and Aaron Stevens was riding the bike. But the way I when I walked in, I saw the long hair. Like immediately, I was like, "Oh my god, is that Edge?"
And Brian, was there ever a time where you were looking at him thinking, well, he's going to, like, it was a foregone conclusion, he is going to train at some point and become a wrestler as well?
I actually tried to, like, dissuade him from it. I think it was probably, like, you're probably, like, your late teenage years, like 16, 17, somewhere in there where he started thinking about it. And my plea to him was, don't do what I did. Go to college, do all this. Then it'll be here. I'll still be active. I'll help you then, but... go to school, be a kid in high school, go to college, do that, get your education, and then it'll still be here in 4 or 5 years, and I'll still be here, and then I'll help you then. So it's kind of funny. I figured when he started showing interest, I'm like, oh, he's eventually going to get in, but I really tried hard to, not have him make the same sort of mistakes that I made. Not even from like a getting into wrestling standpoint, but just like, hey, yeah, go get your education, do that shit. Like, get that all done because, when you're done, you'll be 22, you'll have your degree, and then you can just focus on this, and then you can get a job at some point. But
you remember that like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was 15 when I did the one-day camp, and I remember going on like a long vacation, and I remember sitting there with Jamie and Brian right before we went on vacation. My dad and my stepmother, and I remember like Jamie like saying like, if you want to do it, like you can, like I didn't have to pay to sign up for school. I'd never had to pay the monthly dues. Like that was like the agreement, but like as a 16-year-old kid, like so Jamie didn't make me do that. So he let me join the school for free, which like I think was $2,500 at the time, and then not have to pay monthly dues. But I do remember being like discouraged of, don't do this like till you're older. And
I had a very similar agreement with Jamie. I just avoided him and never had to pay a dime.
It's weird you say that 15 because I know like Ilya had trained at like I think 13. I think Mighty Mini had trained.
Ilya was a 10-year vet at 23.
And like Mighty Mini, didn't he start training at like 14?
He was very young.
It's like my stepson is now 13. It fucking blows my mind the concept of him being the same age as some of these guys training at the Chaotic Wrestling School.
Yeah, which I look back at that now and I'm like, there's absolutely no possible way that I would allow my son, who may be the size of a 13-year-old at this point, but I would never allow him to train at 13. There's just so much that it's a man's world. Like it's and I don't mean that. I guess I got to think about how I phrase that.
It's an adult's world.
Yeah, because that's what I mean. Like I'm not trying to be like sexist or anything like that. It's an adult's world. It's a very grown-up world. There's a lot of grown-up things that are happened and said, and colorful language can be used or. I mean, just think about like, these people bring their 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, just like drop them off. And like, I remember there was a couple young kids even before Ilya, El Chupacabra and Curly Mike Colucci, who were like 13. Their parents were letting them go on road trips to Delaware and stuff. I'm just like, and now I think about that as a I didn't think anything of it at the time. And now, if anything, we looked out for these kids. Yeah. But now I think about like, I would never put my son in the hands of like a group of pro wrestlers and be like, hey, he's 14. Watch out for him.
Well, these are a lot of like immature people in their 20s, so it's
very true.
They're like a kid.
20s?
Yeah.
I see some interesting things from guys pushing 40.
And like a kid's going to naturally look up to these guys regardless of what your parents say. So it's kind of just crazy to me now that I have a stepson who's like the same age as Ilya when he started wrestling. It's just so insane to me. But we're getting off topic a little.
Yeah, but I mean, it ties right into Jimmy's story, and that was like I said, I was really just like, go be a kid, like go be, because even like when I joined at 19, I was immature and not quite ready for it yet, and I really set myself behind because of my lack of maturity and just, I mean, sometimes just. Time with life on Earth helps you in this in this world. I say it all the time. Like this, I think about like this person just needs more time on this planet. They need to experience more things in their life.
Now, Jimmy, when you saw Milonas training and stuff, you said you didn't really have any feelings of training or anything like that, or even joining the school. This isn't an honest shot at you, but was it laziness? Like, did you not want to do the work, or is it just like, I'm okay with being a fan?
Yeah, I was okay to be a fan. Like Brian said, I was a really good baseball player and football player. Like when I was 13, I was the city MVP for Babe Ruth, and very similar to wrestling when it came to I always try to let my talents do it instead of actually putting the hard work in. Hence why I'm not wrestling anymore.
No, the reason why I ask is because, like I said, it's not to be a shot at you. It's why I don't wrestle today. I just don't want to put the work in anymore. So,
I mean, not to get into our whole sad story, and I don't know if Jimmy would get mad at me for saying this, but I mean, like when our mom passed, like we were young. I was 16, Jimmy was 8. So, I mean, when you're 16, like people, I mean, I didn't need the same attention that my younger siblings needed. So, but they came up in a time, especially Jimmy being only 8 years old, he was very much hey, cut him some, everybody, teachers, everybody, cut him some slack. He's a kid whose mom passed away, type of situation. So, I will say, and Jimmy knows this, and Jimmy's recovered nicely from this, and he's successful and has a family, and but especially at that time, because I think the same thing sort of happened in sports too, when it came time to like. You can't just get by on natural athletic ability because, when you get to high school level of sports and things like that, everybody's pretty talented. So the hard work starts to be the differentiating factor. And we always had trouble sometimes with Jimmy. Jimmy, like, hey, come on. Like, you got to put in the extra time. You got to put in the extra work. So I think that was part of it too, with thinking of Jimmy from a maturity standpoint of trying to dissuade him from getting in at the time. I mean, I knew he was a big fan, obviously,
Well, I heard you on other podcasts talk about how at the beginning, you didn't feel you were treated very well by certain people in the. Were you worried at all that same thing was going to happen to Jimmy when he started training?
Not at all, because I think I was in that dickhead mentality. I will say, thinking about it now, and I don't know, like there'll probably people who get mad at me for this, Jamie, Mike Hollow, I don't know, but it was a pretty toxic environment, and it was really that old school boys club, bullying sort of mentality. Like I cringe at. I think of some of the fucking things I probably said to people, or like shitty things I said or did to people. Not like horrific things. Like we're not talking about things like that would like get me like arrested or anything like that. But just like rather than being as helpful as I could be, like demeaning people or shitting on them, and and it's funny how quickly we all forget those moments of how you used to feel getting treated like that, because then you get in the midst of it, and now you're one of the haves instead of the have-nots, and you do this, you make the same mistakes and do the same things. So I was probably as guilty as anybody when Jimmy first started, as like giving him shit, giving him a hard time, like, and it was the way we were brought up. No, this is not an excuse. Everybody has to be accountable for their own decisions and actions, and I just wasn't mentally strong enough to be the one to say, hey, this isn't cool, we should fucking be a little nicer to people, and all of us that were there reflected on this and realized, like, yeah, we were kind of, people hated us with good reason, like we were assholes. But yeah, I mean, there's people who made my life, there's guys who I still hate to this day because of the way they treated me.
When a lot of fans see an indie show for the first time, they're kind of like, well, these guys aren't very big, I can do this. But you're kind of growing up almost amongst the indie wrestling. So do you think any of that came into play with you, or did you have a totally different perspective on it?
It wasn't the thought of I could do it. It was just like seeing. I started getting really close with the guys. Like, my entire I don't have like friends that are my age anymore, because once like I hit like 12, 13, I'm literally every weekend going to Attleboro Moose Lodges in Southbridge, Massachusetts. So like my friends started becoming the Handsomes, the Tomasos, and all the guys around the school, and Jamie, and so like. That was like, it was more of just like, it was there because it was like my admiration to move forward was more just because I was there every weekend.
Hey, Julian, I don't know if you're aware, but Jimmy actually saw somebody else at this table wrestle before he ever saw me wrestle a
really?
match. Yeah.
You share the experience of watching one Tarzan Taylor?
I actually have Tarzan Taylor's autograph on a card from, it was Brady Singer Memorial Field.
Yeah, man, I remember
where the Fisher Cat Stadium is. I went to some huge show there, Lobster Man show. I got to meet the Wolf Man. I got to meet Lobster Man. And I looked on the card, and like my ticket from the show, I still have it. It has Maverick Wild and Tarzan Taylor's signature on it.
That's how life is, like, so
it's so crazy.
Weird sometimes.
You have this?
Yeah, I have it at my house.
I need to take a picture of it so I can put it on
I'll find it.
We talked about this earlier, how so many times we have guests and these weird intertwining stories that have happened over the years.
Well, it's just so crazy to me because, like, I even when I discovered chaotic wrestling, I saw you, I saw Handsome. Handsome was the Duke of Elegance at the time.
It blows my mind because that's so like that's like not even like the beginning of his career. That's like deep. That's like two career-ending injuries into it.
But like I saw Tarzan Taylor, saw Marcus or Mark Vincent. DC Dillinger, Eddie Edwards, Brian Fury, and then like later I'm hanging out with these guys on an everyday basis. Life is just so incredibly weird.
Do you remember the first time we met Tarzan?
Wasn't it at that Bob show?
Never met Tarzan before, and I meet him at this Bob Evans like TV. We'll use air quotes.
Warehouse. Or something like that.
And you needed a ride home or something, and I gave you a ride home from like Rhode Island. First time I ever met the guy.
Jimmy was there.
Yeah, that's the day I wrestled Panther Martin, and he dropped me on a big mat.
Oh, I remember that match.
And I walked barefoot in that disgusting bathroom.
Wasn't there a fourth person on the ride? I remember it was the three of us.
Fury?
Handsome.
Was it Handsome?
Was it Handsome?
It was Handsome because he was like telling me I didn't get up for the boss man sleep.
Oh yeah, you were all upset about it. And then we're like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, cut you some slack as you're wrestling fucking Panther Martin,
So did you?
Wily veteran Panther Martin. Sorry, I didn't cut you.
No, don't worry. So did you have other people, like when Brian wasn't allowed, being like, oh yeah, you should definitely do this, or no, get the fuck out of here, you don't want nothing to do with this?
There was nobody pushing me, but the people who got me like involved with like do it. Like I was on Omega Security for like 2 years or 3 years before I actually started wrestling. So I was doing like spots on the show, and it was the Logan Brothers and Chase, which is funny because like it actually got me in trouble for saying this in the past, but there was like a group of students that was like the Brian, the Handsome, who took wrestling serious. I actually geared more towards like the Logans and the Chases because Brian and I are very different when it comes to that stuff.
So you went into wrestling and had fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was a shitbag.
No, I was. I mean, it was. I mean, I guess neither Julian nor Tarzan really experienced it, but the chaotic mentality was just very different. The way Talo was bringing us up, and they're good and bads. I mean, some of the things that are really good that have served me well is like the treating it like a business, the being professional, things like that. But then there was also like this cult-like mentality and the intolerance for anybody who had the difference of opinion on what the wrestling business, should be. I also don't subscribe to the theory of like this. Well, it's the wrestling business, so sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Because of I hate the guys who do that and like, well, I drink and do these drugs and stuff because of wrestling. It's like, well, no, you don't. You do that because you like them. The guys in the '80s who were on the road 7 days a week and they had to snort coke to get up because they drove all night, and then and they had to keep themselves up, so they took a lot of stimulants, and then they had to take a downer to get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and they're exhausted, so then they had to take an upper to wrestle the match. That's how drug addiction started, and they're away from their family 300 days out of the year. That's why they cheated on their spouses. So for indie guy who works 3 times a month maybe and sleeps in his bed 30 days out of the 30 days of the week, like, no, you're not doing these things because of the wrestling business. You're doing them because you like them.
Yeah.
So I didn't subscribe to that theory.
So when he starts actually training, are you like, all right, this is going to be good? Or are you like, oh, fucking, this guy's going to fucking embarrass me? And
Not embarrass me, but I was hard on him. Like, I expected a lot out of him, like, because of how I looked at myself and my position. And, like, I didn't want it to reflect poorly on me. So I was definitely, I think that's kind of the story of our relationship. And I don't know if that's just normal older brother stuff or what, but whatever. When I coached Jimmy, I expected more out of him.
Was there ever a point that you, Brian Milonas, got nervous that he might become better than you or outshine you or overpass you?
No, I guess that never even probably crossed my mind because I wanted him to do well. Like, the being hard on him wasn't because of like I wanted him to fail. It was because I wanted him to succeed. Like, I wanted him to be really successful at it. Same thing even when I coached him in baseball. Like, Jimmy was like the best player on the team. I was really hard on him. I was really like just pushing him, trying to get him to do more. But it all just came from a place of like, oh no, I want you to be successful. I want you to be like me. I want you to be a success like me or whatever. At that point, view myself as a success of like, hey, I'm fucking chaotic champion, brother. It was no concerns over that. Just like I wanted him to do well, and he was starting to do things that was like that I was not liking. Like he wasn't taking it as seriously as I wanted. Why? Because he's a fucking 15-year-old kid. But in the moment, my feelings were very different.
What about you, Jimmy? In reverse of that question, in your mind, were you thinking to yourself, I'm going to be better than my brother, I'm going to outshine him, I'm going to surpass him in any way, shape, or form? Did you already think you were better than him?
I didn't think I was better at it, but that always was like a driving point. Like Brian said, in like baseballs, like the big leagues, he hit like 4 home runs his 12-year year in Little League. I hit 8. Or like in football, he was like a lineman, but I scored touchdowns and stuff like that. So that was always like my goal, is like I want to be better than him. So that was a driving point.
Was there ever a point in your career that you did at some point say, I'm more athletic or I am better than my brother?
I know I was always more athletic, like, because I could throw like a drop kick, even as a fatter guy. I could throw like a drop kick and stuff like that. So I knew I was more athletic, but I never had like he was always better worker than me, but by far.
I can't help it if I got this. I'm bottom heavy. I'm just,
Well,
this ass looks magnificent, but it drags you down. You know?
It's no secret that Jimmy Milonas had a bit of confidence in professional wrestling that kind of radiated to everyone, which could have rubbed some certain people the wrong way. So I'm wondering if there was a point where you were like, "Thank you, bro, but fuck you, I'm better."
No, you don't. I was an arrogant douchebag.
We all become that way as a young.
I was too. Some of that probably is because in New England at that time, I'm well established, I'm well respected. I've done
chaotic meant so much more back then.
Yeah. So I think I'm sure part of that with Jimmy was like you know who my brother is,
Yeah, once I learned who your brother, I'm like, all right, whatever. And I was just as arrogant a prick as him. So
I think what always got me about like when people used to talk about like I keep people out of chaotic or whatever, and it was just like if I have so much influence in chaotic, how come I can't get my own brother booked? So for all these fucking crybaby douchebags that like think I kept him out of chaotic, I couldn't even get my brother a regular spot on the shows. Like, so tell me how much power I wielded over the booking of chaotic wrestling.
Well, the thing about that, not the chaotic, but the brothers thing is, I can admit this now, but at the time when my brother came into the business, I wanted him to succeed, but part of me wanted not to succeed as much as me. I can admit that now. Now, do you guys think you felt anything like that when Jimmy started?
I didn't, because and this is going to sound really arrogant or cocky, but I was so established and like that, I didn't have any concerns. And like I said, the way I was perceiving Jimmy at the time, and it was really frustrating because we'd have really tough conversations. Like, especially Jimmy's time in wrestling was one of the most divisive things in our relationship as brothers, because I took it, I see things very differently. I took it very seriously. I'm trying to make it. And for him, it was just like, well, I just want to fuck around and do this. The desire for him to like quote unquote make it or whatever was not the same as mine. So we just viewed wrestling and what we wanted out of it very differently. And for me, at that time, kind of the chaotic mentality was, well, if you don't want this, if you don't want to make it, you're a piece of shit. Get out of the business.
I look at it now; it's so fucking stupid. Like, who cares if my brother succeeds more in Lobster Man's company than me? Like, who gives a shit? Like,
it's amazing the things that you go along that are important to you, and then when you get that 1,000-yard view of it, you're just like, oh my god! Like I get a little embarrassed like over some of those things. Like, man, oof.
Same way. As you age, you start looking back, and you're just like,
oh god, why did I ever care about that?
It's the same feeling you get when you look at old Facebook posts.
Yeah,
you're just like, why did they post that?
Some of it's like we all get in it. Isn't that supposed to be like the tragic thing of like wrestlers, like why like their prime is like 40 to 45, when like mentally you start to really get it and put it all together. Physically, you're not capable of the things that you used to be capable of. So we're all full of piss and vinegar, 20-something years old, wanting to make it to the next level, artificially or not. Your testosterone levels are very high, but there's a lot of that. There's just a lot of that, and when you get like a whole group of guys all around the same age, like it also becomes a competition because you're all competing for very limited spots. So I think and again, like the mentality of chaotic of the day was, if you don't want to make it, then you're a fucking shitbag, and you should I should rephrase that. If you don't want to go to WWE, you're a shitbag, and you should get out of the business. Like, that was the mentality. So here it is, my own brother. Like, well, I just want to have fun with this. I was like, fuck this, I really was. It really was probably, again, one of the most divisive things in our relationship.
Was there ever a point once Jimmy's kind of enthralled and everything, was there ever a point that this became just like high school? Because typically when you're in school with your brother or sister, whatever, you are more inclined to protect them from physical harm, emotional harm, anything like that. Was there ever a point where you felt like you had to stand up for him in any way, shape, or form?
No, I mean, if anything, I let him take the abuse because I went through the abuse. So it was like, no, you just pay. Wrestling's a fucking sick. I mean, I'm glad some of this stuff has changed now. Like, I look at it, and the wrestling business for the next couple generations is going to be better because a lot of this stuff has been eliminated. But there very much was like lining up the new guys in the corner and chopping the shit out of them till their chest bleed type stuff, and beating the shit out of them in battle royals. And it's just because, like, for generation after generation after generation after generation, it was that's how you pay your dues and things like that. And I'm so glad it's gotten away from that. But again, when I'm in it in the moment, like, no, I'm like, no, fuck, I had to go through this. I got my ass beat. I got treated like shit and ribbed and picked on. Like, to me, it was like, so if he'd be upset about it, I'd be like, I had to go through the same thing. What are you crying about? Like, type of mentality.
And Jimmy, who was actually training you when you started?
It was a weird time in the CTC. When I first went there was Coach Hollow, and Brian and Handsome were the two under trainers. And then there was like Coach just randomly left one day, and then John Walters was our trainer, and then Dr. Heresy was coming in, and it was just weird. And then like finally they just said, okay, Brian and Handsome, you guys are the trainers. And then Coach came back, and then at that time, I was already on my way out at that point. At one point there was a time in Chaotic like where it was like the Mike Nice period where those three dudes came in. It was Mike Nice, this kid Nick, and this guy Kofi Montana, and they all sucked. And
I forgot about Kofi Montana.
And they started like talking about using them. And mind you, this is the I was decent. I was better than those three. And then I remember they used Sledge for a match against Handsome. And I got the whole, they don't want to use you for that because they got plans for you. It sounded like fucking Sheldon talking about plans. It was big plans that weren't going to happen. And then 2 months later, Sledge is on shows, and I'm still doing fucking Omega Security. So I was like, I want the fuck out of here. I want the fuck out of this company. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Now, why was that? You just felt like you'd put in your time and earned your spot?
Yeah, like I was actually before I got like that point, I was actually decent in the ring and stuff like that. Like I was doing Heresy shows. Like Dr. Heresy is the first person that ever put me on shows. Like him and Jamie, I owe a lot to when it comes to wrestling. Like for first, there's like 5 guys that I owe like my entire wrestling career to. Not that it was much, but he started putting me on shows like that. And actually, I was in Mike Nice and those guys' first matches, and they were fucking terrible. But like, I would have these guys like, oh wow, you're doing really well. You're doing really well. So you keep hearing that, like, okay, why doesn't this other company want to use me? Like, they have a built-in storyline. What the fuck's wrong with them? And no, I just was content because I was good at doing security. I would just keep being put there.
I feel like some of that probably was, at least in Chaotic, was the fact that like they're not going to bring him in as my storyline brother because of what they have me embroiled in. So he probably was a victim of some of that. And then there's no, unless you put him under a hood, there's no denying that he's my brother. You can't, it's not like we look complete. It's not like Sam Houston and Jake the Snake Roberts, like they don't look anything alike. Yeah. They don't have to be storyline brothers. If Jimmy is in Chaotic Wrestling, we have to be storyline brothers. Like we look exactly alike.
You think either one of you get anyone fueling the flames? Like, oh Jesus, what the fuck's up with your brother? And anything like that going on? Do you think either one of you?
I mean, with him when he was like not taking things seriously and things like that, like my confidants, like the guys who I was close with who did. It's not that we weren't like trying to look out for him. It's just we wanted him to be like us. I guess we wanted him to take it seriously and and go for it. So Handsome, Tommaso, guys like that. I think they looked out for him. Max Bauer, I think they looked out for him. But it really was like, yeah, what the fuck's his problem? Does he want this or not? And again, it's just the mentality of the time, rather than saying like, hey, he wants to be here, he wants to wrestle, he just doesn't want to make this his life.
What about you, Jimmy? Was there ever a point during your career, because you said you kind of hung around the Chase and the Logans, like were there ever times where they were like, what the fuck's up with your brother, Brian, and blah blah blah?
No, that never. The only time I ever heard like the Chaotic hate for guys was like when I finally when I got back into wrestling after leaving for a bit and like went like BTW and those things. No, the only like those guys would like pull me aside like, hey, like what's going on? Like, why are you not going to training? Like, get your head out of your ass. Like those guys would actually like pull me aside and talk to me. And that I think was one of my biggest issues was Brian was like, they would talk to Brian instead of talking to me. So I was like, hey, fuck you guys. Like, I'm the one here doing this. Like, if you're going to talk about me, talk to me about it. That's the only part I ever got mad about.
I do think that's part of the business, and that still exists today, where Brian Milonas does something wrong, I don't tell Brian Milonas. I tell 6 people other than Brian Milonas.
In hopes that it'll get back to him via word of mouth.
Yeah.
And he'll change.
And then babyface it when you get confronted.
Yeah.
What? No, I never
said that.
I mean, maybe I can't say everyone. I feel I'm guilty of it in the past.
Yeah.
Most people are guilty at it, but I think that's part of the business that just exists. Probably should change because it would probably help things in the long run.
I mean, you guys know too. I mean, you guys know how I communicate. Very direct. Very like if I say
very
like. So I mean, think of giving Gimby and Jimmy. I'm sure it was not. I know for a fact it wasn't like I was giving them constructive criticism. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck's your problem? Like, you're fucking doing this. You're screwing up here. You're screwing up here. Like, da 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 da. You're making me look bad. Like, and so I'm all over him all the time. So yeah, it's a tough spot for him to be in. Again, I think part of that too is how we've been closer in age, done it, coming up in the same levels. I mean, by the time he joins at 15 or 16 or whatever, I'm already 4 or 5 years into my career, you know, so I'm already really well established. And, you know, even for him just breaking in, unless we just made the commitment to be a tag team, he's not even going to get some of the same bookings I'm getting because of the level of experience.
Now, when you finally had a match, were you like, hey, Brian, can you give me your opinion? Or you're like, I know he's just going to bury me. I don't even want him to watch the match.
No, I never asked like any of those guys. Like, there was Brian, and there was 2 dudes who made my life. I won't name them because that's not like
I names on this
Come
podcast.
on, you can name names on this
No,
podcast.
I really because the stuff that was like I literally was kicked in the balls every single time I saw this person.
Wait, physically?
Yes,
I mean, I'll say it. Hanson used to hit him in the balls all the time. Like, there was one I remember we were in like orange mask.
I stole his hat,
and that was the first time I actually said something. I was like he just handsome being handsome.
Yeah,
you know, like not. And then it's not like handsome.
It was never
handsome is the fucking least malicious guy like I've ever met. He's just like. He's a big kid
life's
just
a joke
having
to him.
fun.
Yep,
yeah,
life's a joke to him.
And he hit him so
serious.
hard in the balls. I think Jimmy puked or something.
The one time I remember you.
Place.
The one time I remember you really sticking up for me was we were doing a Lowell Spinner show, and Fury. It was when he first joined. Like, started shitting all over me, and you like. That's the only time I remember you like stepping in, like, no, like that's not okay. You
Because
can't.
I hated Fury at the time. I'm sure too.
I hear you were both huge fans of his back then. So
Yeah, when Fury came in, I fucking hated his guts. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, you don't know any of us. Like, you walking around like your shit doesn't stink. And now I love the guy.
Yeah, I would have never predicted that at that particular juncture that I'd ever be friends with Brian Fury. Yeah. But now he's one of probably my closest friends.
And again,
like,
I think it's just a habit of growing up. Like at the time, he's same thing as we've been talking about. You're confident. You think your shit don't stink. You're just like, fuck you, buddy.
Well, then the New England wars here, chaotic
too.
in WFA. You know, like these WFA guys are coming in, like they're getting top spots. Like, fuck you. Like you guys suck. You're not as good as us.
because I've always been friends with Brian, but I remember times where like people were like fucking shitting on him the way he acted back then, and I'm thinking to myself, God, if they hate him this much, God, I can only imagine what they think of me, he and I being friends.
I hated you for the longest time, Tarzan. It wasn't even your fault. I was lied to.
You know what's funny is that's actually why I revered Brian Fury, because I was like, look at this guy, just speaks his mind, no filter, doesn't care. Had no idea that was not a likable thing in wrestling.
Fury definitely is one of those guys that takes that pride in being rude sometimes.
Hated me, come on. I mean,
do you remember the Trick or Treat Battle Royal?
I do remember that. Yeah.
So I was told that there was actually plans. Like the only reason why I agreed to it is I was told like there's actually plans. Like we will do something for you. We're not just gonna have a guy kiss you and embarrass you.
Is that the chafe leg battle?
Yes. And then so like I get told this, and then not being used. So I freaking hated you. Like I remember you texting me to do a Wooborn. No, was it Littleton?
Yeah.
You texted me to do a battle royal. I'm like, no, I'm good. And then finally I went up to Littleton with you guys, and you and I took a trip to a hardware store together.
Yes, I do remember.
And I remember like talking to you about it, and like there was never any fucking plans for that. I'm like, motherfucker.
Well, it's hard to defend because if I defend, it sounds like I'm putting the blame on other people. But Brian, you can kind of back this up. There were so many when we had booking committees. There's like people saying stuff that not telling the other people. Sometimes not intentionally. Sometimes it's just forgetting. So I don't want to put the blame on anyone else, so I do apologize for any of my involvement that made things happen the way they did.
We're talking about Crockett here, right? No, we're talking about Crockett being involved, right? And not telling anybody.
Come on, kayfabe booker.
No, it honestly was Jamie, and I think and I love Jamie to death. Like, probably one of my done more for me than most people in life. Jamie never wants to be the bad guy. And he didn't have the heart to tell me.
Well, no, but that's this thing too. Jamie, legitimate. When you have booking committees, somebody might legitimately have thought this. There were ideas that I concocted in my head that I told Tarzan that we talked it through. That's not the right idea. And then sometimes that can be construed in somebody's head of, we were gonna do this and we didn't. But it's like that was I don't necessarily think that Jamie didn't have that idea. It's just. That was his idea only, and it never came to fruition. That wasn't necessarily what was supposed to happen.
Sometimes I've been guilty of, I'll discuss an idea with Brian, and I assume he's told the said person, and then I act like they knew it all along.
I mean, the booking is a whole. I don't know. I don't know.
That's a whole nother episode.
Holy shit, we could do another booking. Some of the stupid shit you deal with booking, and how much wins and losses and fake independent wrestling in front of 100 people mean to people, and
All right, that's a topic for another episode.
Yes. That'd be a good topic. that might be one post retirement for me though.
We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna have more with Brian Milonas and Jimmy Milonas talking about Brothers Wrestling. We're gonna get into more when the actual idea of the Milonases as a tag team first came up. When we come back on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
Are you a wrestling fan, but you've always wanted to get in the ring? Do you want to follow in the footsteps of superstars like Donovan Dijak and Flip Gordon? Then check out the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. At the NEPWA, you can live your wrestling dreams and train at the best pro wrestling school in the Northeast. Check out neprowrestling.com for information on joining and about their upcoming fantasy camp. It's neprowrestling.com. Start your pro wrestling dreams today.
Boys, meet Senator Smith.
You act like a man with something on your mind.
Why don't you tell the people the truth for a change?
The truth. The man wants the truth.
The man wants the truth. What is the truth? Said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer.
How do you want it, Senator? Dished out or in a bottle?
The people of this country pick up their papers, and what do they read?
And we're back with Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way. Matt Spectro here with Julian Starr. And we're talking with Jimmy Milonas and Brian Milonas. We're talking about brothers in professional wrestling.
The brothers. Oh. It's an inside joke. They don't even get it.
Nope. But if anything can make Jimmy Milonas wheeze laugh, I'm a fan.
Jimmy's been purple-faced like for half of this episode, like trying to bury his face laughing.
So what was the first time where it was suggested and it actually happened, an angle involving the two of you together?
I mean, outside of Chaotic, it happened first, right? Yeah. VCW.
Oh, yeah, the VCW thing.
So we wrestled for Jason Rumble. I think it was Jay who hit us up. Jay Rumble hit us up about doing some random show, which weirdly that night we ended up in a fight as well over over pro wrestling.
Oh, it was after the match. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, the first time it was ever pitched to us, and it happened was by Jason Rumble, and we went and won the VCW tag titles, which that was our first and only tag match there. And did we ever go back? We went back and dropped them.
Yeah.
We had two matches there because I was going to miss like a number of the next shows or whatever.
Because that when we lost the titles, that's actually what led to me leaving VCW because of bare knuckle Burley, and I almost got into a fist fight the next show.
I don't know if you guys realize that Jimmy's quite the heater in wrestling.
I was a douchebag.
Well, that's what I was leading to earlier. So when you guys finally had that match together, I mean, typically, I don't know about you, Tarzan, I assume you and Mark Vincent had some good chemistry. The Logan brothers have great chemistry. Did you guys have some good chemistry in the ring your first tag match together?
No, not really. Just very different thoughts and process, and just we never, we had wrestled out of it for a little bit too.
We had wrestled before. We had wrestled on like a bunch of Lowell Spinner shows and stuff like that. Because
we did a Dusty finish. I put you over for the title.
That's right.
So, from what you just said, I doubt after that match, you're like, oh, we got to make a run at this. This is money.
No, we got in a fight, like in the locker room, not like a fist fight, but like an argument. I think I was trying to give you feedback or something.
I just
and
walked away from you.
Yeah, and you fucking walked away from me, and I was very pissed off at that. Not even from like I'm a wrestling veteran, respect me, but like you're my brother. Like I'm trying to talk to you, and you're like, I don't fucking care. I do this for fun. So and I'm just like, and then right there, I knew I don't want to do this. Fuck this. He doesn't take it seriously. Like I don't want to have shitty matches. So I mean, it's kind of ironic considering the company we were working for, but I mean the kids we wrestled. I mean, I wrestled Dan Terry and no, it wasn't.
That's
Dan
where
Terry.
we lost the titles. We beat Diamond Dino there. Dollar D.
Yeah, Dino's
and
a good
Nick
wrestler.
And
Pantusco. Whatever his
Nick
name is.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah, Nick Fahrenheit. Yeah, so I mean, the guys we wrestled were pretty good wrestlers or whatever.
Is the reason why you didn't want to receive feedback is because you just thought you were, better than you were, or
no? At that point,
like what frustrated
wrestling?
you?
When I was doing the best time I ever had in wrestling, I was away from Chaotic and that crew, and I was wrestling for BTW.
He's away from me.
It was, but yeah, I was doing the BTW. Like I'm hanging out with Delfonso's, AJ Matrano, Steve, and those guys. I'm enjoying wrestling. It's fun. Like I'm able to, and I'm not wrestling like every weekend. I had this like weird mishap, like medical thing. I was out for 4 months. I got really fat, and I never lost the weight. And when I came back from wrestling, I was so frustrated because I couldn't do the stuff I could do before, but I was so desperate to be wrestling because it's pretty cool to go to a bar at 23 years old and be like, oh yeah, hey, did you see I was on TV? Like, because I was on BTW, did like a whole episode.
The Winds of New England.
So like, it's cool to like, it was a talking point for me. So a lot of times after the bar, I would always carry money on me. And like I would always have to make sure I have a lot of cash on me, so I look like
catch that big sniff, fellas. Catch that big sniff. I mean, he is the Playboy in a weird way because of me. So I don't know if I've ever told this before. If this ever been told on a podcast before, you might be getting an exclusive, which Crockett will be very
Exclusive.
Be very upset about. I don't know if I've ever said this on the WPAN because that's the only other place I could imagine I would even tell this story. But BTW had hit me up maybe a year or two before they booked Jimmy, and they wanted to bring me in, and they wanted me to do a Playboy Buddy Rose gimmick. At first, I agreed to it, and then I got cold feet, and I wrote Steve Perkins back, and I said, "Hey, can I wear can I just go shirtless, but can I wear pants, or can I wear like longer, like biker shorts or something? Like I just don't." I don't feel comfortable with like my thighs being out. Like I just don't. Like some people feel like I'm very comfortable like wrestling shirtless or something like that. Like that doesn't bother me. But like my thighs, for whatever reason, it's just I'm very self-conscious about them. So then I said, okay, that's fine. I'll do it. I'll get trunks. And then not too long before the show, I was like, hey, you know what? This is really not for me. Like I don't want to do this. Can I just come? If I can't come in as myself, then I don't really want to do it. So then I think I want to say, I don't know if it was like a rib against me or like kind of a shot against me or whatever, or if they just really want to do the character and they figure, well, there's a guy out in the Indies that looks exactly like Brian Milonas, and we wanted Brian Milonas to do it, and we'll have Jimmy Milonas do it. So
I did a Chaotic show the night before. Rick was in the locker room. He goes, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? They need guys to go down to the studio in Derry for BTW. So, oh, cool. I asked Brian, like, hey, can I borrow like a bunch of sequins? I think I'm going to be wrestling multiple times. After that, I got called by Scott Reed. Hey, what are you doing today? Come down to the Auburn Pits for Scorch was holding a thing for BTW. And then Steve pulled me aside that day and was like, hey, I have this idea. I actually ran it by your brother. He didn't want to do it. He goes, after meeting you and seeing your personality, I actually think you can pull it off. He goes, would you be okay with wearing trunks? I said, oh, yeah, I don't care. He's like, all right. Perfect. He goes, I'll call you in 2 weeks. I have an idea for you. I got to talk to Terry, make sure it's okay. Literally 2 weeks to the day, he called me, said, hey, can you get trunks made and get a robe? And we want you to do a Playboy Buddy Rose character. I said, sweet. And then Brian goes, oh, hey, I want to use this entrance music for Julian. You ever heard Cobra Starships make the good girls go bad? I said, no. And I look it up. I said, that's my fucking entrance music.
Remember me bitching that to you?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it would have been perfect for you.
Now, Brian's been very vocal about the perception and treatment of fat guys in the business. Do you share his opinion on that? Do you feel that's ever been something that's bothered you?
No, because I really was only I was always bigger, but I wasn't like I mean, you guys saw my last run, but like I wasn't all really fat until like towards the end, and that's where I was like, it was just embarrassing. Like I go back and watch stuff I did for like APW and stuff like that, and like it was just I deserved whatever treatment I got there. But the like in BTW, I was a bigger guy. But he actually told me, like, he pulled me aside after one of the shows, and he goes, this was supposed to be, like, a comic relief character. He goes, you made it something more. And he goes, I'm glad you did. So if you remember, I don't know if you remember, like, I was doing, like, push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that.
I remember the vignettes. They were fucking amazing.
Yeah, so, like, it was supposed to start out that. But, like, my last thing for BTW was they were going to start feuding me with Flex. Because him and I wrestled at that Scorch show. Flex was their champion for like 3 years. We were supposed to start feuding for like the television title and stuff.
Tarzan, you remember the vignette where it's like, that's how you stay in shape?
Was that Mel Simons?
Yes, Mel Simons.
Dude, that vignette was probably the greatest thing I'd ever watched.
That was from the television episode. We were at Tony Roy's house in Nashville watching WrestleMania, and they're like, hey, we want to film a lot of the stuff, so bring your thing. Bring like your gear and stuff. And the entire like night, like we just started coming up with weird things. Then finally, like we ordered a bunch of food, and I go, "How about we have me answer the door and take all the food in from like the?" So it's just like myself pitching like the fat guy thing, like where you see me like pull like a thing out of my trunks.
Yeah,
like that was just me. Like I'll make myself look like a complete loser. And that's when I told him like I'll grab my toupee and stuff like that. Then the rest of the night he like played like footsies with me on the couch. It was weird.
Yeah. I think it's I don't know. It's half and half. So the thing you're alluding to, Tarzan, is the every time I feel like certain companies, being very diplomatic. I know you guys don't like that. Certain companies, they hire a fat guy, and they hire him when they're fat, and then they show up in their ring, and then somebody goes, "Holy shit! Who signed this fat guy? Why is this fat guy here?" And then they're usually given some sort of silly gimmick or made to dance, or they like food, or like I remember Bull Dempsey.
What are you talking about? They did wonders with him.
Yeah, stupid bull fit gimmick, and Bull's a guy with a good look and like good persona, good character in the ring, can move a bit. Like they could have done. They didn't have to give him a silly gimmick like that. And who knows? Maybe it was even his idea. Yeah, I think like now the Otis guy from Heavy Machinery is eating ham, and
yep, same gimmick.
A lot. Yeah, there's a lot of it. I think the evidence supports my theory, and it's just like I'm just glad like Handsome isn't getting that treatment there, and he's taken very seriously, and at least so hopefully it remains that way. Yeah, you see it a lot in pro wrestling where, or just the cheap fat shots, at them. I think, there was like a Randy Orton promo where he was taking fat shots at like Kevin Owens and stuff. And yeah, I just think I don't know. He's a fat guy. Let's make him fucking dance and eat. Oh, he's going to eat too. He's going to have a gimmick where he eats.
I feel like that's not really a thing in the indies, no?
Brian Buffet.
Yeah, I mean, I fucking was saddled with that dumb shit. Like, when I first started, it's because, I don't know, it just gets this perception. And I think for me, it's been my entire career fighting that perception of, no, I'm way more than that. If you just see me, you just see a fat guy, well, then I'm sorry for you. And I fight that perception with a lot of times the fans of like Ring of Honor and things like that, and then they actually see me work and was like, oh, this guy can actually wrestle. So suck on it.
If those companies are hiring, though, I will wrestle a naked minion gimmick, and I'll eat whatever you want me to eat. Just got to pay me. I'm not above those things.
It's slightly off topic, but I've always thought it's just the perception. Like, if I look at, we'll talk about New England. I look at you, I see a guy who looks to me like he can generally kick ass. I look at Big Bear, I look at a guy who looks like he can't even stand up without somebody helping him. So it's really how the particular it can be perceived. Yeah. I don't think all fat guys should be perceived the same way. But.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I think it is more of a national level type thing. Like let's turn fat guys into fucking some sort of silly gimmick or character. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's because there are people who can't work, or maybe because I was saddled with that dumbass stuff at first. Maybe that's why I'm so overly sensitive to it, because I've really fought hard to, you look at guys like, somebody like the Big Boss Man or something like, or Bam Bam Bigelow or Vader, or these guys.
Yokozuna.
Yeah, these guys, kicked ass. They were good. I mean, like Vader and Yoko are the ones that really two that come to mind that they lost mobility as they got heavier. But yeah, I think for guys who take it seriously and like who are just bigger guys, like I get it really annoys the shit out of me.
So back on the subject of brothers, I mean, with two brothers in the business,
got brothers.
Yeah. The booking almost writes itself. So is there ever a point where someone said to either one of you, "Hey, we're going to make money. You feud with your brother, like brothers explode, like Owen Hart, Bret Hart type thing"? Like, has anybody ever said to either one of you, "Hey, this is something we got to do"?
One-off matches.
We had a lot of like weird like match. It actually got to the point like the only time I was ever aggravated wrestling was that Thanksgiving show with the turkey tussle where he hit me with the pie. I was so tired of wrestling him at that point because we wrestled all the time at the school, little spinner shows. It was actually the point where I was like, I don't want to wrestle Brian anymore.
We did a few things in Chaotic. I know like Al, I was feuding with Al leading up to like one of the Cold Furies, and he had me come out and I cut one of my famous worked shoot promos or whatever. And
that was the funny thing is you're actually supposed to wrestle Robbie E that night. It was the snowstorm show.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you called me. We were actually supposed to wrestle really early on in Chaotic. I don't know if you remember this. It was right after we had that blow off on a Saturday class where I quit. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to class anymore. I'm done. You dropped me off at my girlfriend's house at the time. You were texting me about wrestling. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not fucking wrestling anymore. I was in school. You texted me, hey, Jamie wants to have you wrestle me in Derry. Only thing you've got to do ring crew. I'm like, nope, not fucking interested. And you end up wrestling Tony Omega.
Thanks, Jimmy.
So during that time, once you guys started wrestling each other, I know you said previously in this episode that you guys didn't really have chemistry as a tag team. What about as opponents? Did you guys mesh well?
Yeah, I think the matches we had were pretty good. I mean, I remember I think we did even like a main event for like UFO wrestling, which they used to draw really good crowds for their Thanksgiving like Eve shows.
That's when you hit me with the belt. I like scarred. I blocked with my shoulder. I had a big cut in my arm.
Yeah, like I think our matches were were pretty good along the way. So I think but I guess it's probably because our relationship in wrestling is more naturally adversarial. So it probably lended itself better to wrestling each other in the ring.
Would you guys say that there's any in New England, any other brothers you saw in the business that you thought, well, we should be more like them, or man, what they're doing wouldn't work for us, or anything like that?
I mean, when you think about brothers in New England, I mean, for me, the first one's going to mind the Logan brothers. I mean, I think a Logan's Milonas Brothers feud would have been a layup if we had sustained anything as a tag team.
That was always like, once I really started getting into it, like that was always like my hope. Because I get to wrestle guys like I really looked up to like Chase was like my favorite wrestler as like a kid going to shows, and like the Logans were just like they were always like so I had like the guys who treated me like their little brother and like abused me, but then I had like the guys who are like the older brother like coddled you, like that's what Logans and the Chase did, and those guys did to me. So like I always wanted to wrestle like those guys. So when like the whole tag team was like, oh man, that'd be like that's money right there. That's the stuff that would like get me so mad. I'm like, I'm not like terrible in the ring. You'd put me in there with three guys who could clearly carry anything.
It's literally my sales pitch. Remember, he was going to be my tag team partner for.
But yeah, it got so frustrating.
You think being both involved in the business ever hurt you guys' relationship?
Yes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We legit like got into like a physical altercation that like his wife had to break up over wrestling. It was right after, pretty sure it was Walter's funeral. Like that's one of the we've had like three really big blowouts. The one where I quit wrestling for the first time, it was one after Walter's funeral. And there was one because we used to work together too. So we're going to training together. We're going to the gym together, and
living together too. I think
we're living together.
Living with us,
and we actually the physical altercation was like when we no longer lived together after that.
Yeah, it was it caused way more tension than it did ever good for us, and I mean it's a shame that it ever got to that. And again, I understand my part and accept responsibility for you just getting this mindset and. I'm not blaming wrestling, but wrestling gets in your head a certain way, and you're trying to do stuff, and you're trying to make it, and here's my brother, and why doesn't he think like me? Why isn't he doing the things that I'm doing? So that would frustrate me, and then it would manifest itself into very unhealthy things, and especially where we didn't have separation of like, all right, we can get away from each other for a few days and reset. I mean, we're spending every waking moment with each other, so it was, it was tough.
With you guys spending every waking moment with each other, was there ever a time that you guys maybe had to go to the same show, even if you weren't tagging together, and you guys were just like, I'm going to take my own car. I'm not traveling together. I don't want to be road buddies.
Weirdly enough, we didn't work a lot of shows together. I remember you, like, Dad bringing you to, my father would bring him to like shows he was booked for.
Yeah, I quit the weekend I quit. I had 2 shows left to do. I had both for Dr. Heresy, and I think you were even on one of them, and I didn't ride with him. My dad brought me to it, and I remember Kid Crazy trying to convince me to go out in Boston with him that night. I'm like, yeah, no, my dad's here. I don't think he's gonna allow that.
Yeah, but he was working BTW a lot, and I was working Chaotic, and I didn't ever really work for BTW, and he wasn't get booked by Chaotic, so most of the matches he had, like we were not on the same shows.
So Brian Milonas, you stated that your frustrations derived from the fact that you were like, I don't understand why my brother's not thinking this way or doing stuff this way, and that's what frustrated you the most. What frustrated you, Jimmy? Like, what caused your frustrations with
not being used in Chaotic? Because it was there. Being such a big part of Chaotic, I think, was one of my biggest downfalls. My biggest regret was Clean, our buddy at the time, was here, and we were talking about we didn't want to go to Chaotic anymore because of the toxic environment, and like we wanted to go to the school in Manchester.
There's a guy who you don't think mental, you don't want to share their mentality. It's Clean.
That's actually the thing is I think that actually hurt me, like hanging out with him so much because he had such a negative thing, and then I looked at it as like I already did like all like the ring crew stuff. I didn't mind helping, but when these guys there got to a point like it was honestly the worst thing that ever happened to Chaotic. It ended up being one of the better things. But at the time when Fury and that crew came in, like the head guys at Chaotic, like walked around big dick, like they had to act like they were badasses, refused to help with anything. So you have like 4 or 5 like students putting together like rings and stuff. Well, these guys are all just standing in the way, acting like assholes, like, and they're still ribbing you while you're doing it. And it's like I was just so done with it. I wanted away from that group. The funny thing is like all these guys now, like I think it's as I got older, it hurt me being so young because like what the fuck, like God, I really was like everybody's little brother, like, and it really bothered me.
The other thing too is when you're that young and you're looking up to these guys, you're like, wow, these guys, these big wrestlers, and they're just shitting on your life. You're like, fuck wrestling, fuck these guys, fuck my heroes.
Well, there's like a good crew coming in. It's like you and Biff at that time, and like it's like a good group of crew, and like you guys are all like not treating each other like shit, and I'm like, wait, all these assholes like treat me like a piece of crap, like, and these guys who don't know me from a hole in a wall, like they're all treat me really nicely. Like I don't understand this.
I mean, I definitely applied some of the things that I was taught, but I like to feel like when I started training, I started to become a little bit better and trying to instill good things into people with some of the shitty tendencies, but starting to realize at that point, like,
But I think that you have a different mindset in ribbing someone. It's not. I feel like ribs back in
it's not grab your stuff, burn it to the ground.
Yeah, like there were people that would like lock your gear in your bag or hide your shoes on you or just flat out be like, look at this fat fucking piece of shit. Whereas like I think yours is more like, why are your shoes look like clown shoes? And it's just that the visual paints a funny picture. So it's just all in good fun. It's just a different version of ribbing. And like Jimmy had stated, I was around when I saw people getting these like ribs. I was like, Jesus Christ, like that feels like a bullying. I'm glad wrestling has progressed well beyond that. I can tell you.
It's very different now.
Locker rooms I've been in, it's just everyone's friends now.
I wouldn't go that far, but
for the most part, you know what I mean. Acquaintances.
Wrestling's the most fake, like as far as like friends and stuff like that.
Hey,
like,
brother.
First of all, I mean, everybody is best friends with Sasha Banks, Kofi Kingston, Oni Lorcan.
Yeah, the successful people, everybody's
Ivar. I mean, literally everybody are these guys' best friend. I don't know if you Tommaso.
It's like that on the indies too. That as you start becoming an indie darling,
success by association.
Yep, like I'm best friends with Josh Briggs, Anthony Green. You know, I'm sure everyone's going to be up DL's ass in a couple of years when he starts blowing up even
Probably
more
not,
than he is. But it's just you're right, and I'm sure you have people that come and talk to you now that you're in Ring of Honor that probably didn't.
Yeah, there are people who I get messages and texts from.
Yep.
All the time, like
big fan.
Oh, I knew it, brother. I knew it the first time I laid eyes on you. I can't believe it took so long. Like,
you did?
Did you?
But didn't hear word 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Anybody ever propose an idea involving the two of you where one of you were like, nope, fuck that, not doing anything with him, I've had enough, like anything like that?
Just the Derry show.
Yeah, probably this guy.
He goes, every idea possible.
Yeah, no, just the Derry show where I was like, yeah, no, I'm not coming to do ring crew. I have no interest. Like at that point, like I'd been with like my girlfriend at the time for a year or so. Like I was just more past of like the. Once I broke up with her, I was like, oh, I should probably go back to wrestling.
Once he was, getting some.
Elia's first day.
Wrestling seems a lot less cool when you start having sex with girls.
Oh no! So Elia's first day.
Is that okay to say? Is that too far?
Nope, that's perfect.
That one's good.
Elia's first day at school, like I was talking with Handsome about her, and Handsome goes, "So have you done anal yet?" Right in front of Elia.
But was that? Remember when he did that in a restaurant?
Yes, that's when you guys found out.
Fuddruckers and like doing Handsome is screaming across the restaurant. There's families and children, and did you do anal?
So this all like I may have committed adultery at 14 with a married woman, and so I didn't know anybody knew. And then Brian and I are out to lunch one day, and I like made a comment later. He goes, "Yeah, I heard you like older women," and it clicked in my head. He knew. So he proceeded to tell everybody at the school. Well, that weekend, Nova was in town. So Nova's giving this speech. He's like, yeah, it's like baby Milonas up here, having sex for the first time. And good old Handsome, ho, ho, ho. He goes, I don't even want to know. And then we're talking like at Fuddruckers, and Nikki Rocks is involved in the conversation because she's very ladylike. She's like, oh, you did you guys do it in like the shower or anything? And then Handsome goes, so did you do anal? There's like a family next to us.
Oh, this is the stuff you guys want. Yeah, you want the good stuff. Right?
This is that juice we've been looking for.
Which is why, as parents, Tarzan, we cannot fathom allowing a kid at 13 or 14 to be involved with the pro wrestling business.
My niece is like 22. And I was aghast when she told me she listened to our episode where we had the girls on. And I texted my brother. I said, why is she listening to that episode?
Did you hear Julian say broad 5,000 times?
Yeah. Oh, he was so upset. I didn't even know that wasn't a thing anymore. There's so many words that have been like canceled out in the world that I don't keep up with.
But she's like a woman. I mean, and I'm that aghast. Imagine if like my stepson heard that episode. I would be like,
Daddy doesn't do that anymore.
My brother's wife.
Missionary only.
She says, oh, I listened to your show. I said, okay. And he's like, yeah, what was with that guy who first 5 minutes says he got into wrestling to bang chicks?
Sherman.
And I'm like mortified talking to my brother's wife about it. I guess I kind of brought it on myself, but...
Having Mark Sherman on? Yeah.
Not for $25.
Oh, man.
All right.
We're going to get text for that one.
Back on topic a little bit. So we got to discuss to my knowledge, is the biggest longevity of you guys doing an angle together would be becoming tag team champions in chaotic wrestling. That was the longest angle you guys did that involved each other.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's weird in a weird way. The fact that other people were against it and I fought for it and he knew people were against it, that it galvanized the two of us to actually come together and be like, well, fuck these guys.
I actually started being dedicated in like the gym. I was pissed.
Was this one of the first times that you both as a tag team or even as brothers in general collaborated with each other so much about how to make this better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I mean, Jimmy was very receptive to the ideas that Tarzan and I had too. Like it was. I mean, again, I think it's been talked about famously on this podcast. We won't go down there because
that was another podcast.
I got very upset.
It was another podcast.
Oh, it was a different podcast? It wasn't this one?
Yeah, it was.
You were a guest on. Okay, yeah. I got you. But I was very upset about when the last time I heard this subject discussed. But yeah, there was this idea of the split me and Scotty Slade as a tag team, but I think we came up with the idea of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if like we split, but we're still the tag team champions and we could build like this winner take all sort of match. And my idea was like reform like some version of Big Business. So try to get Max Bauer, whose career is over due to some injuries, but we figured like, hey, I know at that point he was like coming to the school once in a while, and he kind of just didn't want any part of it. So then we're like, Alex Arion, that'd be perfect. Or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe Al was first, I feel like Al was first.
I think Al was the first idea.
Yeah, and I don't know if he was he banged up or something, or
I think that's when his neck was hurt.
Yeah, I think Al
and he really hadn't been doing much wrestling.
Yeah, so he didn't. He was like, no, I just can't right now. And then we came up with Max, and then we start spitballing. We talked about it off air here, but like Robbie E was suggested. Like, why the fuck would I ever team with Robbie E ever? Like, on what logical planet? Not that Rob's a bad guy, just like for this storyline, like why would I break up with my partner to call Robbie E in?
Even current NXT superstar.
Yes, he's a manager.
Even Robert Barastow or something like that.
Yeah,
isn't he like a rib on like Tony Khan or something?
So.
Yeah.
Even like visually, I can't see Robbie.
It's
E
weird.
with you.
And then I was like, no. And then like I think, and these are people pitching ideas to me in Tarzan. Like, what about Scott Reed? No, the other one that we thought kind of made sense was like, oh, we can bring, because I had won the tag team titles. I'm like, for sure, we can bring back Sledge. But Sledge didn't want to. Sledge didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to come back.
So then I suggested Jimmy, and Tarzan was actually very against it at first because of Jimmy hadn't been wrestling. What sort of shape is he in? But I think you started to warm up to that idea when others didn't. I think I felt like you at least warmed up to the idea, and the whole time was never supposed to be like this long-term thing. Like, come in, we do the angle, Jimmy comes back. We laid out a really cool story of like having Jimmy come to shows and just because he's my brother and he had been to chaotic shows here and there, but it's like I think for like 2 or 3 shows we just had him stand in the crowd, just hanging out, just watching, hanging with my daughter, who's his niece, my CTE, So it's so people just got used to seeing him at the shows, like the regular and Chaotic for I'm assuming the fans that listen to your show know the deal with Chaotic. I mean, it's the same freaking people who have been coming for 15 years.
Yeah.
So they're there, and it's like you start to know these people by name. They know Jimmy. They know him by name. They know he's my brother. They're asking him every time, you getting back in the ring? Jimmy be like, no. So I'm talking the whole time. Sorry.
No. There's actually pictures of the night I do the barricade thing with like Casey Ray is like coming up to say hi to Kirsten, and like there's pictures of us 3 together, like. And yeah, no, it was fun going to like the shows and like and they would be like, oh, you gonna wrestling? And I'm like, no, hell no, like I'm done with this stuff.
was the actual term? Was that the show like I cut the promo on Sherman's mom or something? I don't remember. I don't know if that was the same night, but like.
Yeah, you came out talking on the mic. I don't think your music hit, but you came out like talking to Sherman's mom, like how you're going to hurt her son, and he asked for this and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we had like a match or whatever, and then I think like they were like 2-on-1 or whatever, and I like sold out of the ring, and then Jimmy kind of the way the Chaotic was set up was like there was the entrance, and to the right's the commentators, but you could get in like and walk across the entrance. And Jimmy, the video camera of it is great because the hard cam is opposite, so you can see Jimmy coming in the background. Like I think you took your shirt off or something, and then got in the ring and clotheslined them, and the place fucking exploded. You're talking 150, 175 people or whatever, but the place fucking exploded for it.
Now you get to hear a little bit of the people things that rub people the right way. That was a better fucking reaction than anybody else would have got, and I stand by that.
I don't think that's an incorrect statement.
I think, like I've said since told you the night of, and I've said since, I said that it was one of those moments where the crowd generally was like
shocked,
like what is going on right now? Like,
yeah, like people. I don't know that's. I mean, sometimes wrestling fans they're on that edge of not necessarily, knowing what's real and what's not. Like, there might have been some genuine confusion over like what is this supposed to happen? Like, what is going on here?
My favorite part of that whole thing, though, was like I'm going up for the Vader bomb. Crowd's waiting for it. Tony S. slide right under the ring.
Well, in honesty is in the name of our podcast. Full disclosure, when we were going back and forth at first, I had the attitude, which I did a lot back then, was be like, fine, if this means so much to you, we'll just do it. The more I had time to think about it, I'm like, from a booking standpoint, this really does make a lot of sense. Brian is, even if I was against Jimmy at the time, I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Actually, this is the smartest way to go. So.
Yeah, and then it was a subject of more controversy, not involving us, but indirectly involving us over who should go over in the match. But that's another subject for another day. But, we went. It just made sense for me, in my mind, booking sense. I think for you, too. Like, we bring him back, and if we lose the first time out, there's no sense in going forward with this feud. We wanted to get a little bit of leg, some legs on this feud. So I think, initially have to go over in the, in the first, in the first match, and then ultimately we were going to drop it. But that's actually when I sprained my ACL, and I was out for like 4 or 5 months. And
you being against it is the only one that makes sense to me, because the last conversation you and I had about wrestling, I looked you in the eye in Littleton, New Hampshire, and said, "Don't ever fucking contact me again for wrestling. I don't want to be booked anymore. Leave me alone with it."
All right, so Jimmy, when this is pitched to you, did Brian have to fight to get you to do it, or were you on board right off the bat?
No, I actually remember he texted me, "Hey, I have an idea. Bring you back for wrestling, be my tag team partner." And I kind of had known what was going on, because I would go to shows every once in a while like that. So I'm sitting in my room, it was at my apartment. I'm like, "Oh shit, really?" And I'm not doing anything at that time. Like I'm not really, I'm working. That's it. So I'm like, okay. And so he starts pitching it to me. He goes, "But you have to you actually have to be committed and stuff like that." And the funny thing is, I actually just had gotten a gym membership and stuff like that. And so I was excited, because the whole layout of what we were gonna do and stuff. I was like, okay, that would be really cool. It's some stuff I never got to do. I get to be on a Cold Fury, a Chaotic. That's not in a Chaotic Countdown where me and Bobby Dempsey have to roll out together to catch 2 drug addicts, trying to do some weird spot.
By the way, you like True Justice? You like people shooting from the hip? I think the Playboy is. Oh yeah. I mean, you want them to come bury some people. I think this is really the first time. No offense to Jason Rumble and VCW, but for us to be able to do something in Chaotic meant a lot. Because just of how long I'd been there, he had started there. I think for it to be happening in Chaotic was pretty cool, pretty special for us.
I look at it as terrible as it's cliche is. It looked like a homecoming, and I had a lot of fences to men's.
Fence to men.
Speaking of drug addicts,
he goes, I'd done some men.
I did some really fucked up shit, the guys the Western Dragon, and I had rubbed guys that meant so much to me growing up. I was basically an adult now, and I really wanted to apologize to people, and so I remember seeing Chase and those guys and Handsome and the Western Dragon pulling him aside and apologizing for being such a piece of shit to them. I literally beat the tar out of Western Dragon on a VCW show because he shied away from a dropkick on a Chaotic show, and that bothered me. The way I went out, I didn't want people to remember me as that douchebag, because Brian told me you rubbed so many people the wrong way, the way you walked around Chaotic and stuff like that, and that bothers you because there's people that you grew up with. Most of you guys have known me over half my life. I'm 30 years old, and I met most of you guys when I was 12 years old. So it was just, I had a chance to finally clear the air, and I don't want people to remember me as a douchebag.
I never thought you were a douchebag. I saw what people were saying. I'm like, all right, I can see it from that angle. But I don't know. I never viewed you that way. Do you think that everyone who you apologized to accepted your apology genuinely?
I would hope so. The biggest one was the Western Dragon, because Evan is one of the nicest people I've ever met in wrestling, and genuine, and just wants to be a part of it. And for me to do what I did to him, and you know what? You know how nice he is, though? He didn't even know what I was talking about. He was like, "I never thought you did that to me," and I'm like, "No."
It's because everybody did that to Evan.
I'm like, no. That was so wrong of me, and so I mean, I really hope so, because it meant a lot to be accepted back. But I still had that chip in my shoulder. I remember us winning the belts and Brian being show it to the boys out back. And that's when you see the picture of us is we're looking, behind the curtain.
I'm curious, why did you feel you needed to, I think I know the answer, but for everyone listening, for regular fans, why did you feel you needed to, basically beat the shit out of G. Evan?
Because I was a douche. I thought I walked on water, and I treated people like absolute garbage.
You're looking for the wrestler mentality, though, right?
Yeah. And this is what I'm kind of alluding to. Did you think it would be cool to the boys that you beat the?
No. There was actually a show we did where I think back, it was me, JT Dunn, and I think Stiff Mike. All had guys we were wrestling we didn't like, and we were making okay, we'll see who can hit their opponent the hardest. And that's the type of stuff I was doing. Or I wrestled Shady Shay. I don't know if you guys know him.
Oh yeah, I do.
I was wrestling for WCW, which the promoter of that's a piece of garbage.
Holy
Jamie
shit!
Rebello
You wrestled for WCW?
But I got shit faced before the match. And that's when I kind of knew, like, this isn't what I was taught. Like, I got drunk we were at a bar. I got drunk before the match, and I remember him coming to me to talk over the match. I go, I need some time to, like, sober up before we can talk. And that's the point where I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, you're talking about like this guy made me look like shit, so I have to physically harm him mentality.
Or even like I never had that feeling like I need to go out there and beat the shit out of someone. I've never had that feeling. But I always felt like it was expected of me if someone lower tier wrestler that I was in there with, that's what I needed to do to impress the boys in the back. You know what I mean? So I didn't know if you had that mindset.
I've done it twice. That one I feel bad for. There's another time. There's actually a video online where I punch an announcer in the face as hard as I can. But he was actually a radio host, and it was at BTW. He's Shaggy, and he was like going over stuff, and he just kept interrupting us when we were calling our match. And I told Steve, like, get this guy away from me. I'm going to hit him. He goes, how about I call a spot and you can hit him out there? And I'm like, yes, I'll tag him as hard as I can. The only reason why I hit him as hard as I could, though, is because, like, the spot was he's supposed to, like, just kind of walk away from my mirror and let it fall. He literally throws the mirror down in the ring, and it breaks. And you see me look at it, and then I just haul off and I clock him. I was mad. And then you see, like, a point where I kick him really hard in the video. Then I, like, stop and, like, I throw a work kick because I realize, like, oh, my God, you just punched this dude in the face, and now you're kicking him.
All right, so with this program, you worked with two former guests of our podcast, the Sure Thing Mark Sherman and that guy Scotty Slade.
Yeah.
Describe in the ring and behind the curtain working with these two.
Like pulling teeth. I mean, Scotty is fairly easy to work with. I mean, Scotty is a guy who operates with a chip on his shoulder. You know, I think he has. I mean, I love Scotty. Scotty's a good friend, but he definitely has short man's disease.
Yes, he does.
He feels like he has a lot to prove because of his size and things like that. But Scotty's really easy to work with for the most part. I had a harder time with Scotty as my tag team partner than I did calling matches against him. Sherman, I mean, I don't know, maybe he doesn't get mad. He's a pain in the ass to deal with. Sherman is a guy who actually has considerable amount of talent. I think right now, if Sherman was, you take that and you fast forward, put what he was and put it in this time period, he probably has a job somewhere.
Yeah.
But he's a pain in the ass. He's afraid of things. Afraid to get hurt, which is a very bad thing in wrestling. If you're afraid of contact and afraid to get hurt and you can't be trusting of other people with your body, you really should not be doing this. And he was very not trusting of anybody, not, I mean, there's the famous not for $25 story where we wanted him to stand on the top. I mean, me and Jimmy are both 6'1", 6'2". Jimmy at the time was probably 450 pounds. At the time, I'm probably 375, 380 pounds. We want him to fall. I mean, literally, so the post is 8 feet?
Think so.
We're both north of 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
We're combined, we're combined over 800 pounds.
Combined?
So, again, you're talking about 8 foot post that he's in on top of, 6 foot tall, 800 and something pounds combined. I mean, what are the odds he gets hurt doing this? Like, I'm literally asking him to just give us a cross body. Yeah. And if he doesn't, it wasn't even the fact that he didn't want to do it, because that would have been fine. He says, I just don't want to do that. But it was him characterizing it like I'm asking him to do this death-defying stunt for $25.
We actually addressed this exact story on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way, which you can find in the archives, but with Mark Sherman. And basically what he was trying to allude to us was, I just didn't think I'd make it look good. I think it would be unsafe for me because I'm not an athletic guy. And I said, well, why didn't you say that?
Exactly.
You should have said that, because when you say I'm not doing a dive for $25, like, you immediately come off as a douchebag.
Yeah.
Immediately.
I mean, because again, I'm one of the bookers at that point. So now you're characterizing this like I'm asking you to put your body at life, and I mean, to me, a flat back bump is more dangerous than this friggin' spot was. So yeah, when you're characterizing it like I'm asking you to do some death-defying thing for $25, which I don't think we ever ask people to. Like, we're not those guys that called like crazy bumps or crazy spots for people knowing what they're getting paid. That's what really pissed me off, which almost led to a fight in the locker room. But yeah, Sherman to work with was like pulling teeth. He didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to get hurt. He was afraid to take things. I think in a way, at certain times he didn't take himself serious enough, and at other times he took himself too seriously. I remember I beat the fuck out of Scotty, who's supposedly his best friend. I wanted him to show some depth and range of character and actually be upset, and he got all pissed off and told me I was trying to change who he is and who he was. I'm like, take the happiest guy on earth. If somebody does something to his best friend, I would expect him to get upset and want to do something about that. Like, so he was. I like Sherman. I actually really like Sherman. I talked to him on the phone like last week for a stretch, and he's gonna get mad at me for saying this. I'm sure I'm gonna get a million text messages, but he was a pain in the ass to put stuff together with.
Jimmy.
I loved the Cold Fury match. After Cold Fury, though, like I just felt like there was just cold water poured on everything.
They were upset about losing at Cold Fury too. Even though the whole fucking thing of it was we're going to build to it like a tables match or something where they go over and get the titles. They were both of them were upset they weren't winning at Cold Fury.
You think they're upset about losing period or just because they were losing at Cold Fury?
I don't know either way. I thought it was knowing where we'd actually laid out the whole story. I mean, it's funny because I get to view this from two different lenses as performer in it and one of the two guys that booked it. We actually had a so one of the things when you're a performer, if somebody wants to do something with you and they don't have a well-defined vision, you're like, well, what do you want to do? Like, tell me what the story is here. We actually had a well-defined vision of like, we bring Jimmy back. They had we had to go over there to just be like, because they were already established team. Even though we're brothers, we're not an established team yet. This is our first match together. We go out and lose the first match, like
it's done. It's over.
Yeah. To me, like the story. Yeah. Well, why am I going to? For me, especially me, my end, like logical wise, I'm a well established singles guy and chaotic. I bring my brother in, he loses the match. Like I'm a heel. This guy lost the match for us. I'm not gonna team, So, but then they were gonna get the big revenge. I think we're gonna even I think the plan was like to have us main event a show and do a tables match.
That was the original eventual plan.
Yeah. So I mean, part of the reason cold water poured is because we did that 6-man, and I thought I had blown out my knee, but I just sprained my ACL. But I was out like 4 months.
Yeah, no, it was that like you getting hurt, and then I found out we weren't really going to do anything with it even before you got hurt. I think the table stuff after the whole $25 thing, it was off the table. It's like, yeah, we're not going to do anything more with that. And then it was just calling the match with Sherman. We had a match in Lowell, like the last show at the PAV, funny, and seeing dudes just like snicker like little girls, like when we were calling the match. And I was just like, it brought me back to like, yep.
Was that the Dan Tanaka heel turn? That was great.
That was great.
Yeah.
Sherman and I had a really good match and a really good reaction. And it just brought me back to, oh yeah, this is why I don't do this with this group.
Did, when you guys won the Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Championships, was that at a point, did that change both your minds and made you think like, we can make actually a good run of this as tag team and try to go elsewhere with it, Ring of Honor, anywhere else?
No, I mean, I think we didn't have any, because I'll let you speak for yourself, Jimmy, but I don't think you were in it for the long haul.
No, I wanted to, like, as much of a mark as it sounded cool to do like a tables match, something like that, because I never got to do anything like that. Like, as stupid as it sounded, I can't walk today because my back's the shits, but I wanted to do something cool like that, like. I never got to do anything cool like that. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And
I can relate to that. So I was so fucking pumped when Tarzan booked me in a ladder match
with Matt Taven.
Yeah. I was so pumped because my entire life a ladder match is all I ever wanted to do.
I love that match.
So I was so pumped. So I know it sounds markish, but I mean, we're all fans of wrestling. So
well, you and I grew up. Well, you're the same age as me.
I'm 30 years old.
Like tables, ladders, and chairs, and the Attitude Era. Like I wanted to be put through a table.
Tarzan, what the fuck? Why didn't you book that shit?
It was on the table. It just some of that was things that just Brian getting hurt is something we could never have seen was going to happen.
You're saying
and that 6-man tag match was so bad, and I was just it's another thing of being so out of shape where I was like, okay, I can't keep up with Brian Fury. I can't keep up with Brian. I can't keep up with a guy like Preston and stuff like that, like or Slade and Sherman, like.
But for you, there was never a point where you were kind of like, oh shit, okay, we won the tag titles, like.
this seems to be going well. This seems to be getting over. Like, we should take this act down the road.
No, a lot of my. I'm more of
Take it up and down the East Coast.
I'm more of I look back at things in the woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and that's the way I look at my entire wrestling. Because, like I said, I remember Nova, the camp we have at Nova, and hearing like, yeah, he said if you stick with this and you work hard, like at 21, 22, you could have a job. I took that as, yeah, motherfuckers, I'm better than all you guys at this school.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that now, like in hindsight, of like, oh shit. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm in Ring of Honor now, teaming with the Bruiser, but who knows if we had, if something swings differently and we go to a tryout together at Ring of Honor as a tag team, they might have said, hey, look, we use these guys and bring them in the feud of the Briscoes or something.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
I may get in shape now.
But I mean, Jimmy's starstruck with me now. He's a little weird,
He's like, you're my brother.
You ever get the you're only this because your brother's the booker. You wouldn't even be in this position if your brother wasn't the booker.
Just Mayor McCheese on Twitter.
Do we know who Mayor McCheese is, fellas?
It's Sonny Goodspeed the third, Brian Fury. I don't know. I'm hearing
the original was Tony on Twitter was like Tony Delfonso.
Do you know that for a fact though?
Yeah.
I've heard Tony Delfonso
Someone took it over for him. He passed the mantle.
There's one on Facebook, right?
That's different. That's a totally different person.
No, so the one
who I've heard is may or may not have been a former guest on this podcast.
I know because a friend of mine was sitting with him when he was tweeting out some of this stuff. He's actually a friend of all of ours.
I've heard Tony Delfonso. I've heard Mark Sherman. I've heard Sonny Goodspeed. I've heard Todd Sopel.
I've heard Brian Fury.
I've heard Tony Stevens. I heard
Johnny Idol.
Tony Stevens.
Tony Stevens. That's an interesting one.
Is that Tony?
Tony S.
Tony.
Yeah. These are all people at one point someone has said, or I've read it.
Anthony Green.
Yep,
Nobody will ever take credit for it because of all like the racist
Sean
shit
Gorman, I heard once was Mayor McCheese.
That wouldn't shock me. Gorman like literally says things for shock effect, so
Here's
he
the
can
thing, though.
seem cool to people.
Does anyone really want to know who it is? Like, do you want to know how to figure out a magic trick, or you just want to?
I know, right?
I would like just like the stuff they said about like like the racist stuff about like Wagner, like those stuff. That stuff.
I am of the mindset too, though, that I'm not sure that it's the same person it's always been, and maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe that's what they want. But I feel like it's somebody different now. I don't feel like it's the original person.
Well, there was a post from Mayor McCheese like a couple of years ago, actually, where he said he was passing off.
I can't believe we're talking about this.
I know, but
it just so I look at it this way: it's like the old burning hammer. Like people,
Mayor McCheese was a thing on the old Burning Hammer.
I had a name on the Burning Hammer. I used to bury people all the time. I went out of my way to edit I used to sit in math class in college and edit the NECW Wikipedia page. And I remember like, I forgot I was texting. I was like, oh, I'll start doing like Handsome's, like all the different names Handsome's had, like Ernie the Cab Driver Wilson. And I'll just start doing things like that. Like they'll be able to tell it's you.
Tarzan, maybe we can do an episode on
Burning Hammer. Oh, Mayor McCheese.
Maybe you can get Mayor McCheese. You can tell them to do like a voice change.
I told him. I said I'll do a whole voice changing thing. I got the software, so
I'd almost be willing to do a Skype episode just because, so he could stay anonymous.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, the only thing that he ever said like bad about us was like the "feed me more" thing.
Yeah,
which isn't even.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've been. Okay, so here's my theory. This is somebody who either likes me or may even be a personal friend of mine, because even the things they've always ever said about me have been very like funny, like not like ever like some of the personal attacks that other people get. So
are you Mayor McCheese?
Maybe. I mean, I'm probably as big a suspect as anybody, but no, I'm not that clever or that mean.
it's Bob's alter ego.
But yeah, I mean, some of the people get really like, I mean, really roasted, and I've always been. This stuff's been always like funny. I remember when, the "feed me more" comment, and I think I called like an asshole last year when he's talking about like Astromania. I don't know. I mean, everybody has their theories and everybody's heard the rumors, but I suspect it's somebody closer to me than I realize.
I don't care who it is at this point. I don't want.
Yeah, it's like you want to know, but you don't want to know.
Yeah, you want to know because you want to be like, really? And be like, wow, good for them for being so witty.
I mean, this has been going on a very long time now. So if it is the same person, like,
but at the same time, I don't want to know because it's the same feeling of learning a magic trick or learning that wrestling is a work. You just it ruins it for you.
And now they're probably a listener of this podcast. I'm sure they're going to hear this and then talk about the fact that that we talked about
or
it.
They'll post a status, something along the lines of,
now I'm going to get buried.
You're on to me.
I didn't even make the New England top 100. What the hell?
Well, they'll
Throw them off the scent.
They'll post like it's one of us and be like, I'm so glad I got to record a podcast about myself.
So eventually you get signed to Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Did that change anything between the two of you as a relationship, wrestling or personal?
I mean, wrestling. No, he's done. He's done wrestling. So I mean, I see him a lot less because I'm traveling so much.
Has it strengthened your bond as a brother?
When he called me and told me that I'm like getting welly-eyed now. When he called and told me he got the contract, like I was like, I remember like my fiance walking in the house like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Brian just signed a contract for like Ring of Honor." And then one of the happiest moments I've ever experienced in wrestling was at the MSG show, getting to see him afterwards. That was
really cool. That Jimmy got to be there, my sister got to be there, my wife and kids got to be there. My aunt went. My cousin bought a ticket separate. Didn't even go with they had gone through. Ring of Honor put some tickets on sale, so I had like a big group. I had one of my best friends from junior high that went. So to do that in front of so many people, it's cool. And. Yeah, I mean, it's weird that he asked me for autographs all the time and stuff. No, Jimmy has a sales job, and he said, "Hey, I got to do a lot of business down in the Baltimore area. So if I need some 8x10s, I'll let you know."
Do you often drop that? My brother's a wrestler for Ring of Honor.
So recently at work, there's a guy who's sitting there talking. He's talking about how much he loves wrestling, and not talking to me. He's talking to this girl there because she's a wrestling fan, and he's like, "Yeah, oh man, like have you ever watched like Ring of Honor or New Japan?" So I just go, "Hey, are you a big fan of Ring of Honor, like current stuff Ring of Honor?" I said, "So you probably know my brother then," and instant friends. He sat at my desk for the next 20 minutes talking about Ring of Honor.
It's bad because I would make fun of the first person to do that shit, but I pull that shit too all the time. Anyone goes like, "Oh, I was watching Ring of Honor," and I'll be like, "Brian Milonas was my trainer." They'll be like, "What?" Yeah, I know Ivar too.
No big deal.
Yeah.
So my fiance doesn't really like wrestling, doesn't know any shit about it, and then she's sitting there and she's like, because I was like, "Hey, I actually want to watch like the pay-per-view thing tonight, I got a couple buddies on it." And then like she saw like Handsome and she goes, "Wait, you're friends with him?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, and then she saw Kofi and she's like, "Yeah, like I started, like I was there at Kofi's like first day at school, the wrestling school, and like Handsome used to kick me in the balls every day."
Just one tear rolls down your face.
I used to remember Homeless Johnny, and I'd always, if I had leftovers, or I'd offer him if I got an extra drink in the morning at Undercover, I'd offer it to him.
Hey, I'm not saying I'm the reason that Kofi Kingston was heavyweight champion, but I was the first person he ever locked up with in a pro wrestling ring. So
I threw him.
I'm not saying I am the reason, but I'm also not saying
during that
I'm
lockup, did you first feel it and go?
I knew it. Even before that, I saw him changing into his sneakers, and I was like,
it was the Dusty Rhodes.
This guy.
The door opened, he walked through a shining light.
Anybody who says that about Kofi before they actually started seeing him do like the Jamaican gimmick, and as that started to develop, they're full of shit. Kofi walked in the door, a scrawny guy, in good shape. Scrawny guy, like small at that particular juncture. That was the 6'4", 240 era. Like anybody who says that is a lying sack of shit. Now, once you actually start to see him perform, and you see the natural charisma, and you see some of the natural things, once you start to develop that Jamaican character, then you're like, "Oh, this dude has something." Yeah. And even then, you're still like, "Oh, he's probably going to be an indie guy who WWE says is too small."
So did your social media and stuff blow up at all, knowing that when it was found out your brother got signed to Ring of Honor?
I always pick up like weird followers. The best part about Brian now being there is he's starting to get like the weird texts and stuff I used to get, because BTW, like the whole BTW things, like I had a dude and like he'll get like the, "Hey, you want to see my wiener?" like stuff, and I would like tell him like, "Dude, like some dude offered me money to bang his wife, or some dude wants me to go out to where the hell was that guy, like Washington, to wrestle him and rough him up."
I just got one from some dude in Utah who wanted me to go out there. Yeah. Hey, it's flattering. I don't, it's flat. Yeah, I don't know. To me,
that's how I always took
it. Hey,
it.
if anybody looks at me, man or woman like thinks I'm an attractive dude and tells me about it, I'm like, yeah, fucking A, right?
I was never
You think
on
these dimple girls grows on trees, baby? I'm the heartthrob of the bouncers.
I was never on TV. I was a twink though when I was 185. I got those messages. I never
Sell you dirty trunks.
and I did. I've sold many.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, for me, it's
flattering.
Like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, I will. Nobody's ever like crossed the line with me or anything like that. Like, man or woman. Like, I've never, nobody's ever like crossed a line or anything like that. And if somebody wants to tell me they think I'm attractive or in some way, then there are worse things in life, right?
You can imagine what it would be like if they did.
I hope somebody does someday.
All right, so before we get into the Fantastic Four, which is the wrap of our show, I got texted a couple of fan questions I want to ask.
Fan questions.
Now, this first one we kind of covered a little bit, but could you guys tell us about the worst fight that you've ever had with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how it started. It was over wrestling, and I think like Steph. So we're living together. We're in the living room. We're getting really loud now. This
didn't start at night. This started in the morning when we left for undercover wear. We were arguing about, it was like a Wednesday or something. Because we had practice. So it had to be like a Tuesday or Thursday. We were arguing about class, and then it kept going during lunch because we used to take lunch together. And then at class, something happened at class, and then it continued at home.
and we lived in like a garden style like condo. So I mean, there's thin walls. Like we're getting loud. We're both too loud people, anyways. And I think Steph like told us to quiet down. And you actually said to Steph, and Steph is my wife, so shut up, mind your business or something like that. And I just swung. Thankfully, he ducked. He tackles me to the couch, and then he stops and goes, "What the fuck are we doing?" So no harm, no foul. But yeah, that was definitely got physical.
The best part is like, him and I didn't talk for like days, and like I was texting with Steph the whole time.
All right, this is coming from a fan who's asked a lot of questions on their show. One, Eric Wilson, and he asks,
"Is that Ray's code name?"
No, he's actually a guy that we work with.
Theoretically, if you booked the Milonas Brothers versus the Noise Boys, who would go over?
Oh, goodness. For
those of you who don't know, the Noise Boys, myself, Matt Spectro, and my brother, Mark Vincent.
I mean, the Noise Boys are a much more successful tag team than the Milonas Brothers.
It's going to be a Broadway.
Although I will say we've had 4 career matches as a tag team, and in 2 of those we won tag titles the first time out. So
that is true.
I mean,
I noticed I always took the fucking pinfalls and we lost.
I'm not doing it. Come on.
I would say
I'm the Shawn Michaels. I'm even getting the wonky eye.
In a straight up match, I would say it'll be the Milonas Brothers. In a guitar and a pole match, it's Noise Boys.
I mean, no offense. I'm not going to do all that barbed wire shit or whatever they were doing up in WFA.
Not for $25.
No, fuck no.
You were probably wiser for not doing it.
My favorite WFA thing is the Christmas Battle Royal thing. Oh, you literally hear Fury's dad the entire time just shitting on DC. It's the best thing on YouTube.
All right, well, we've got a great episode, a lot of interesting things. We could probably go on for hours and hours if we just got into both your individual careers as well.
Oh, I'm sure we will during the Super Bowl tonight. Oh, did I pull back? Do you guys try to tell people you record in real time?
Yeah.
No, we usually tell.
We're live, pal.
We're live on a Wednesday morning.
But, Julian, you know what time it is?
That I do, sir.
It's time for the Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four! The Fantastic Four, the Milonas Brothers. We typically will ask the same 4 questions to all of our guests. So I'll start with the Ring of Honor superstar, Brian Milonas. With your entire dealings of professional wrestling, sir, what would you say you were most proud of?
I mean, I think this run with Ring of Honor, there's so many of us that had that perseverance and ate shit for a long time and lived through the, professional football player, sons of wrestlers era of pro wrestling. But yeah, I think just that, and then getting to perform at Madison Square Garden, and sorry, Jim, I am proud of our tag team title reign, but just from a wrestling standpoint, this run with Ring of Honor, especially getting to perform in Madison Square Garden against Jushin Thunder Liger, like type, that's fake life. type shit, man.
And Jimmy Milonas?
I'm gonna go really Marcus. The stuff I'm like most proud of is like the names I got to wrestle. Like yeah, so
like me, you know.
But yeah, like getting to like wrestle like Hacksaw Jim Duggan or Vader and like those things are Gangrel. Like that's fucking awesome.
No, I mean, you're still a huge fan of professional wrestling. Like,
yes,
you never let
is that a fat joke?
you never let learning the craft of professional wrestling ruin the aspect of being a fan. Where it's like someone like Milonas, Tarzan, and myself, all we can do is overanalyze everything. I feel like the thing that you're good at is you've never let wrestling skew you.
I have moments of that, and that's like that's why I don't watch a lot of stuff now on TV. Like I don't like that in between when I'm home I like to play with my kiddo, but like I watch every pay-per-view, even though not pay-per-views anymore. I'll watch every single one, but like I don't watch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't watch any of it.
You using the word kiddo just screams white Nikes.
Crispy white boys. I feel like Tarzan would rock some crispy white boys.
I did used to have a pair of the white New Balance.
Yeah, those are crispy white boys. You're not down with the lingo?
I'm sorry, I'm not. I guess I'm not.
Yeah, you got to get on the Instagram, my friend. You got to get on that Instagram.
All right, question 2. We'll start with you, Jimmy. What is, if any, your biggest regret in your time in professional wrestling?
The way I treated people and the way I was always that nice kid, and then I got into wrestling. I feel like I got away from that because they got to see like the athlete side, like it, and it followed me. Like in baseball, like I'm pretty sure it was when Brian was coaching. One of our coaches said something about there's no I in team, and I was the asshole that said, "Yeah, there's an M and an E." Like I was always like I'm really arrogant, and it's something I've worked on a lot. But you know, that's my regret is how people perceive me, guys that I really looked up to, and I'm glad I was able to get things back together where I'm back to being likable.
Brian, same question.
Oh, biggest regret. I was like, I had to think about that for a second. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the putting all the eggs in the WWE basket the entire time. I think back to, weirdly enough, I wrestled Delirious, who executive producer of Ring of Honor. I wrestled him at a Vermont show. Really liked me. I had gotten a dark match where I wrestled Matt Taven, of all people, in a 6-man tag. In Plymouth, Mass. Got good feedback there. Got told to go to a camp, and I said, I'm not a mark. I'm not going to pay for a camp and this and that. And so that's probably my biggest regret. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have swallowed my pride and not just because my mindset was like, well, I don't give a shit about this. So I just want to go to WWE. So and that's where I'm going to go. So I don't give a crap about this. Like part of it was the mindset of chaotic at the time, and it was WWE or bust. But I wish I just had cared a little more about going out, getting my name out there in other places. And because for me, I was like, oh, what's the difference if I work the indie down the road for $25 or if I drive and spend a lot of money, and not thinking about like, oh, get your name out there, you get in front of different people, network and things like that. So I think for me, it was just I put all my eggs in one basket, and then when I finally expanded my horizon, good things happen.
All right, question 3. Brian Milonas, with your entire dealings of professional wrestling, who would you say you hate or strongly dislike the most, and will you name them?
Yeah, absolutely. Arch Kincaid. I mean, I think awkwardly he knows this too, because he always, whenever he, thank God I don't wrestle for Chaotic hardly anymore, because that's the only place I think I would ever run into him. Yeah, he treated me like garbage. Like he really treated me like garbage, even after I had kind of ate shit, paid my dues, straightened out, realized the error of my ways. Still really treated me very poorly, treated me like garbage, made fun of me. Just, it's funny how beloved he is with people. I'm just like, he's like the biggest asshole, or one of the biggest assholes I've ever met in wrestling. But yeah, I can't stand him.
Do you guys think he actually has like Asperger's or something?
I don't know. I mean, he never turns it off, whatever that is. I mean, I was just talking with, I think it was Aaron Stevens, actually. Name drop. But I was, yeah. I was talking to him at NWA, and we were just reminiscing about old, some of the old guys, and we talked about Arch and like Bruiser was there and over here, and so we had to like kind of set the scene about Arch, and just he never ever turned it off. Like I remember just going to like Delaware and Jersey, just me and him a couple times, the two of us in a car, and he's just like, it's like, Jesus, is this guy ever just like.
Stop.
Do you just ever talk like a normal person? Like, do you always? He's always perpetually Arch Kincaid. Like he's always like in character, and it's just it's obnoxious. I mean, you go on like long road trips with him or whatever, it would just wear on you. You go to Delaware, and it's 6.5 hours one way in a car, and by the end of it, you're ready to like open the door and just roll out and hope for the best. Like, I mean, yeah, he was a prick to me, and I
hear you, man.
FM.
Jimmy Milonas, same question with your entire dealings with professional wrestling. I'm sure you have a long list.
Yeah, this is only 2-hour podcast. Right?
Who would you say you hate or strongly dislike the most, and will you name them?
Low key, he's the biggest piece of shit I ever met in wrestling.
Hey, I may have to be on a show with him. That was Jimmy Milonas that said that. Jimmy Milonas that said that.
I'm pretty sure Loki would legit kill you. So
that's okay.
As long as you don't give him your address.
Jimmy's never going to have to see him. I might.
Exactly. Well, what didn't you like about it?
So you were actually the person that got me in trouble, you dink.
Oh, me?
Yes.
What did I do?
Remember at Marathi's show where we'd look through the curtain? Like, and watch the matches?
Yeah.
One of the students was watching a match. I was standing behind you, and you were out a little bit too far in the curtain. That asshole comes up to me and starts berating me how unprofessional I am, and I should get my stuff and get out of here because I'm out on the curtain trying to get over it. I'm just standing there, like, kind of like bewildered. The best part is, like, the bullcrap he pulled on. They had like a 6-man match at the end of the night too, where he crapped all over Tommaso and like told him, "Oh, go run that by Finley," and Finley's like, "Oh no, that's a great spot. Let's do that." It just every time I met him, he just the fake key. It's like, "Oh, okay, tough guy, settle down."
Again, that was Jimmy. That said that.
I'll fight him for money.
Only for money, though.
All right,
rough and rowdy match.
Yeah, I got a kid now. $25 is good.
It's a can of formula, you know.
That's a rough and rowdy booking right there.
Yeah, right.
All right, so that's all on your list.
I won't name anybody else. He still is wrestling.
We could have gone on more.
He goes, Brian Milonas.
Now there's a few promoters.
All right, question 4, Jimmy. We'll start with you. What does the future hold, not only in wrestling, but in life, for the Playboy Jimmy Milonas?
Wrestling's over. I will never wrestle again. I have a family now. I'm getting married this fall, then probably start working on kiddo number 2. As far as like
saying he's gonna have a lot of sex going on. that was like, I mean,
I'll be doing a lot of banging.
But as far as like social media and stuff like that, don't try to follow me. Like, it's weird when you send me a friend request. Like, that's like my friends only. You can follow me on Twitter, but I usually just post like political things.
I will say, people ask, like, inevitably, anybody who's aware of Jimmy will always ask me if he's coming back. Like, that is by far, especially when I work local, like Massachusetts, New England independents, that is number one, like the number one question I get from it. It's not about Ring of Honor. It's about, hey, is your brother coming back? How's your brother doing? Like, from the boys and from fans.
I think I always had that. The one thing, and not trying to toot my own horn, but toot. I think I always had a really good reaction with like fans, especially chaotic or even in big time. Like, I feel like the chaotic crew. I literally grew up in front of the chaotic crowd's eyes.
We didn't even talk about the fact that I wanted him to be Johnny Bravo, and he wouldn't do it.
No, my first ever wrestling character pitched to me was like Chris Farley. Like,
that would have been fucking
amazing. Dr.
amazing.
Heresy wanted to be like a Chris Farley character.
That would have been fantastic.
You're getting off subject, Jimmy.
Brian, in life and in wrestling, what does the future hold for Brian Milonas?
I mean, hopefully lots of good things, man. I'm with Ring of Honor at least through 2020, so I'll be there. A team with the Bruiser. I know, no spoilers, but lots of cool things coming up for us there. I'm able back again to work kind of any independent that I want this year, which wasn't the case last year. So I think I'd like to get out there a little more in the indies this year. And then beyond this year, I don't know, man. Never say never as far as like what may happen. This is a crazy business and weird things happen. So, I do know that, as long as I'm in good health and all that good stuff, I'm still going to wrestle and do all those good things. And I'm excited to finally be someplace where I'm being featured on television, and it's been a long road, and I don't want it to end anytime soon. As far as personal life, I mean, you guys sitting here just bought a house, got a family, 2 kids. They're growing up way faster than you're about to experience. I know you have stepkids, but I know you just had your, you have a baby at home, and she's gonna be, my daughter. We had to pause when my 8-year-old daughter walked in in her very grown-up looking dance tracksuit, and that's gonna be you before you know it, Tarzan. So I don't.
4 months in.
Yeah, I don't know if you realize that. Like, you're gonna be sitting here this moment, and it's gonna blink, and you're gonna have an 8-year-old. Like, it goes by so quick. So I'd like life to slow down a little bit. If I could just pause moments in time, I'd pause right here for a good stretch, because I feel like I'm in a pretty damn good spot in life.
All right, free plug time for both of you. Where can we find you on social media?
Jimmy doesn't want to be followed. So me, you can find me at Brian Milonas on Twitter. I think you can try to friend me on Facebook, but I've reached the max on that. And I don't know.
No sniff after that one, huh?
No.
Reached the max.
Because it's not impressive at all. It's like everybody has 5,000 friends on Facebook.
Not my asshole.
Well, you quit when I put the belt on you, so I don't. Instagram, I'm Brian Milonas KP, and then if I don't do this, I'm going to be in lots of trouble. You can hear me every Monday morning on the WPAN co-host. Well, I don't know. Is it still co-host if it's 3 of us? Like, I don't know.
Isn't there 4 of you now that Sonny's on too?
Yeah, Sonny's going to be like a fairly regular contributor. I mean, really, it's because of my schedule. I'm always gone. It's hard. I'm hard to record with. Michael is too, but he really has nothing going on in his life. But co-host with Mike Crockett, former professional wrestling referee, Brian Fury, who Crockett describes every episode as owner and trainer of the NEPWN Chaotic Wrestling and future Chaotic Wrestling heavyweight champion. So that's the WPAN. Every Monday we drop new episodes. We're across all social media at the WPAN. I'm assuming there's a lot of listeners of the WPAN that also listen to you. We cover very similar topics at times.
Well, we're hoping our podcast gets the rub now that you've been on.
Yeah, well, the only rub you're going to get is when you get home later.
Wait, so you kept me out of Chaotic, and now you're keeping me out the WPAN?
Oh, you're another one that I kept out of Chaotic? I kept everybody out of Chaotic. JT Dunn, Matt Taven, Bob Evans. You
had the pull, brother.
Julian, let's plug our social media.
You can find Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way on Facebook. It is a like page. Please go by Facebook and type in Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way and give us a like. You can follow us on Twitter at Pro Wrestling Way. And as always, you can download our podcast on any major podcasting app that you see fit. Please like, subscribe, give us a star rating, push us up the ladder, and leave suggestions on all social media to make this the best listening experience for you.
All right, like I said, we're doing a special episode where the guests will be picked by you, the listeners. So go to that said social media and vote for who you'd like to see from New England on our podcast. Jimmy Bryan, who would you like to see on our podcast?
I voted for myself on that post.
Man, I'm trying to think of somebody who hasn't been heard
within
from
reason, obviously.
Well, in New England, I mean, I'm trying to think.
We couldn't get Triple H on the show. If we got
Mine is my choice was Drew Cordero.
I'd probably lean more towards maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should try to get him on my podcast, considering we have one of his biggest fans on earth as one of the co-hosts. But to me, like a Tony Roy or somebody like that would be really cool to have on. I think because they could really get into depth of the IWF that Kowalski ran, and really you could get some of the early story. You can't have Triple H, but you could literally have the guy who had some of Triple H's first ever match, may have had his first ever match with him. So somebody like that, I think, would be really cool. And I don't know that Tony Roy has done a podcast, but that would be my vote. Somebody like a Tony Roy.
You can learn. I sat in the BW locker room plenty of times and realized an hour and a half had gone by just listening to Tony tell stories and stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have not dropped by the posting yet, just so you're aware, right now in the lead is Sweat Boy. That is right, ladies and gentlemen, that you people are voting for Sweat Boy right now, and that is the guy we're going to have on our podcast. If you do not contribute...
Why do you say it like that?
I'm just saying...
That's the guy we're going to have.
I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying we are not going to...
Kid.
We're not going to steer away from the...
I didn't even know he's a kid. I think he's
He's a grown man.
Yeah,
He's Chris, right?
Years
I
old.
have
James, something like that.
Chris James.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
I'm not against having him on. I'm just letting you all know that your vote does count. So if you are voting for Sweatboy, he will be on the episode. But you're more than welcome to contribute multiple.
Don't vote for Tony Roy because I think I'm going to talk to Crockett about getting Tony Roy on our podcast.
No. You already suggested it. We'll take the idea.
It's like Julian's trying to stuff the ballot box over here.
What are you talking about?
You can hear me bury more people if you vote for me.
Jimmy, give Jimmy his own episode. It'll be get your shovels out, boys and girls. I mean, then he'll bury me. Let me tell you how shitty of a brother Brian
now
was.
that this fucking guy isn't around.
I had to quote your own podcast. We got dates. Where can people buy a ticket to see Brian Milonas?
Oh, hold on. Let me. This is coming out today? Well, I mean, obviously it's today. We're recording this live right now for all the millions of people who are listening.
Yeah, we all got up bright and early on a Wednesday morning.
Yes.
Just before work.
Yes. So the next time you can see me, I'll be in Nashville, Tennessee for Ring of Honor. That'll be a streaming live event on Friday night, February the 28th on Honor Club. The next night we head to I say St. Louis. I think it's like St. Charles, Missouri or something like that. But St. Charles, Missouri on the February the 29th. I'll be there with Ring of Honor Wrestling. As you know, I am an international pro wrestling superstar. And then I'll be going to Vegas for Ring of Honor on March 13th and March 14th. Again, if you want to see me wrestle these days, your best bet is to get a subscription to Honor Club, man, and watch the Ring of Honor program. It's on Nessun. I think it's on like Wednesday afternoons at 4 or something. But just really be a normal human being in 2020 and just set a damn DVR and search for Ring of Honor. And I mean, I'm available for bookings for a nominal fee. You can have me at your pro wrestling event in or out of New England. But I would like to actually take more New England dates this year where I'm freed up a little bit to do a little more than I was last year.
And in all fairness, Jimmy, anything you want to plug?
No, if you want a business, hit me up. I'll get you. I can sell you some internet and stuff.
Jimmy, you want to come back as Milonas Brothers 2.0?
Jimmy's going to undercut me. Brian sells his autographs for $10, but I'll get them for you. I'll sell them to you for $5.
All right, I want to thank you both for being on the show. We really appreciate it. I hope you both will come back sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Crockett has. I mean, I'll throw it out there right now. I don't know if Crockett has placed this idea to you. I mean, I would love to do a crossover episode sometime. It is Crockett's brainchild, and I love the idea when he pitched it to me. We do a crossover sometime. We do half the episode on the WPAN, the other half on.
He actually did text me about it,
right?
But then I told him you were going to be on, and he said, "Well, we got to delay it. That would be too much Milonas."
Yeah, you don't want to have too much Milonas. The one person of the the two podcasts that has national exposure. but yeah, I think down the road, I mean, we're going to do this, right? We're going to crossover episode, two-parter. I mean, my pitch was, we do I don't know if my suggestion was the top 10 New England talents right now or of all time, but I think something along those lines. And yeah, I think it'd be great.
Yeah,
we'll have the nice podcast. We don't bury people on ours, and then you guys will bury everybody.
We'll flip the script.
Yeah, I love
10 worst on the other side.
So we will. What's the classic line now? Subvert expectation.
Yes.
All right, and thank you all for listening. And we want you to tune in once again every other week on Truth, Justice, and the New England Pro Wrestling Way.
So you say, "Hi, Michael Milonas. How are you?"
Good.
Do you like your daddy as a wrestler?
Yeah.
Is he your favorite wrestler?
Wait, I have a bloody nose.
You had a bloody nose?
Today.
What happened? How'd you get a bloody nose?
Because I was wrestling with my Alex.
You were wrestling with Alex?
Yeah.
What happened?
Then I got a bloody nose.
What did you do to get the bloody nose?
Huh?
Are you being called out right now? I think he's calling you out. I think Alex is calling you out.
I think I got a bloody nose.
How did you get this bloody nose?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I hit it too hard.
You hit it too hard. Were you trying to throw a drop kick or something?
Yeah, I tried to do a drop kick.
You were trying to do a drop kick? What's your favorite wrestling move?
Like a flip.
Like a flip?
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
I'm still learning how to do flips.
You still trying to learn how to do flips?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you trying to be a professional wrestler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. Is that your sister?
Yeah.
She scare you?
Yeah.
Cool. So who's your favorite wrestler?
My dad.